Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and we are live at somethingtowrestle.com, and we greatly appreciate you catching us on your ride home. Of course, we couldn't do it without the one and only John Layfield. John, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Conrad. I got called at Friday about 9 o'clock at night. I had to fill in for Jerry Lawler. Last time I did that, he had died on air up in Canada, but this time, fortunately, his health was good. Something happened. He couldn't make it to White Plains, New York, where Arnie Scollin, the Golden Boy, is from. And so I went up to White Plains and clotheslined somebody, just kind of impromptu, last minute type thing. So had a good weekend.
Wait. Is this NEW?
I don't know the group. You know what? I don't know. I never got the name. They had a full house there. It was a really good show.
Like 3,000 folks, right?
Yeah. It was big house. Yeah, absolutely.
That's my buddy, Mr. Lombardi, and I think Raphael Morphy actually helps with promotion on that. What a small world it is, right?
Absolutely. I saw Raphael there. What a wonderful human being and good guy. Very competent guy. Did a really good job. But I didn't get a chance to speak to him. I did an autograph signing before. I was there with the Zwei tag team. Zwei and Zwei tag team reunited, me and Glenn Jacobs.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we were just kind of sitting at the same table because they didn't have a spot for me because I wasn't supposed to be there, last minute fill in. And I saw Raphael there, but I didn't get a chance to speak to him.
I think he's one of like the quietly unsung heroes of professional wrestling. Like he worked with WWE, he worked with TNA, he's worked with AEW, he's worked with TNA again. Now he's helping with independent promotions. Like if you need to sell tickets to your event, call Raphael Morphy, right? That
100%. Vince used to always say to the local promoters, if they're empty seats, it's your fault. That's how much Vince put on these local promoters. That's one reason. Raphael's one of those guys, though, that he puts people in seats. He does a wonderful job. He's one of those old school top guys, broke in by the old guys who really knew how to put people in seats. And Raphael does a great job. Terrific person, also. Real quiet, as you mentioned. He's just a quiet guy that just kind of does his job very, very well.
Yes, he does. Hey, somebody else who did their job over the weekend were the WWE superstars in St. Louis. Your man, John Cena, retained, not without a lot of shenanigans. It was a big match in Randy Orton's hometown. Everybody and their brother caught an RKO, but when it was all said and done, John Cena, the last real champion, exits St. Louis with the big gold belt intact. Did you get a chance to see the main event? What'd you think?
I was working, so I caught up with a lot of it on social media, and I saw all the RKO extravaganza at the end, and of course saw Randy Orton, who's, good Lord, he looked like he ate the younger Randy Orton. He looks fantastic. I mean, Bob Orton is a dear friend of mine. He tells me all Randy does is train. He just trains. Every time he goes over there, he's got a gym in his garage. He just trains all the time, and he looks fantastic. What a rebirth to a career. Not that Randy needed it, but all of a sudden you change and become this. He's huge.
Yes.
And you've got this whole new iteration of yourself. I really applaud Randy. I've always been a fan of Randy Orton.
By the way, I know people, television can be deceptive at times, but he's Hulk Hogan in his prime. Right
yes.
Now. Like height, weight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know the look is different, but the size is there, and it was a big time main event. Of course, the rest of the card looked like Jacob Fatu retaining, Lyra retains, Dominic retains, and maybe the biggest surprise of them all, Gunther and Pat McAfee. As of now, Pat McAfee has lived. I don't know if there's going to be long-lasting effects behind those chops. I guess that still remains to be seen. But yeah, not an easy day at the office for Mr. McAfee. Gunther wins the match, but I mean, just living through it and living to tell the tale, that's kind of a dub for Pat, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The rite of passage kind of back in the day was to have Haku chop you, and as soon as you did, everybody regretted it once they did it. I got to have Haku chop me once, and all of a sudden he broke my sternum. You think I'm dead? I'm actually seriously hurt. I may never wrestle again. That's Gunther. Gunther's safe, by the way. So was Haku, by the way. But man, Gunther hit you hard. I was sitting out there doing commentary one time, and he chopped somebody, and we were in commercial. And when he did, I said, "Oh my God!" And Kevin Dunn was in my ear. He goes, "You want to come back?" I said, "Hell no, I ain't coming back. Not against him. He'll hurt me."
No doubt. Shout out to Gunther. Can't wait to see what's next for him. Of course, we are just a couple of hours before Raw on Netflix tonight. But the big news that everybody's talking about today, there's two pieces I want to get your reaction to. One is about Braun Strowman, who we just recently talked about as a part of these WWE releases. Well, how about this for a curveball? During today's NBC upfronts, it was announced that a new WWE-produced series starring Braun Strowman is going to debut on the USA Network this fall. And despite Strowman's recent release from WWE, he's back, and this time in a television capacity. The name of the show is called Everything on the Menu with Braun Strowman. It's a new food format with a big appetite. Each episode joined WWE legend Braun Strowman as he eats his way across America while on the road for WWE, ordering everything on every menu and trying to down every last bite. Everything on the Menu with Braun Strowman is produced by WWE Studios and Bright North Studios. You know, we just talked about Vader last week. Why could they not have given this to Vader and Yokozuna? They were ahead of their time.
Completely ahead of their time. So it's Klondike Bill the one time that ate the two 72-ounce steaks out in Amarillo,
Yeah.
the Big Texan. Had that huge rocking chair that was, built for, somebody actually bigger than Big Show. It was so freaking big. It was really fun, but Klondike Bill ate two of them. I tried to eat one of those one time. It was like 44 ounce or 54 ounce, something. Me and Barry went. I'm like, oh my God, it's horrible. It's just horrible trying to eat that much freaking food.
Can you imagine doing two of those?
No, I had to mess up his system. JP Shellnut, Bruce Pritchard's buddy, and buddies with Billy Gibbons and all the boys down in Houston. He called me one time. He was at the Big Texan. He was eating a steak with Billy Bob Thornton. So I sat there in the middle of the afternoon, watched Billy Bob Thornton try to eat this 72-ounce steak. There was no sound or nothing. It's just like those guys just eating there. It's like a shitty little camera that was filming it too.
I don't know why I find it hilarious that everybody seemingly knows JP Shellnut, but it always reminds me of, his voice when he talks, he sounds like a King of the Hill character. Yeah. I forget the guy's name, but he'd go, dang old boomhar, man. Like that's how JP Shellnut communicates. Is it not?
Yes, you need like a Rosetta Stone to talk to him.
You need subtitles. Yes.
Well, you need subtitles when, literally, you need somebody standing there to write it out and hand it to you because he's incomprehensible.
Yeah.
But everybody knows the guy somehow.
We got to talk about some other big news that came out today. According to PW Insider, WWE is bringing back their celebration of women's wrestling. It's the PLE known as Evolution. We last saw this in October of 2018. So it's nearly 7 years old, and we're excited that it's back. But I guess the catch is it's on the same weekend as their Saturday night's main event, which hasn't technically been announced as being in Atlanta, but that is what everyone expects. It's going to be the day after Saturday night's main event. Of course, that is a big weekend for AEW's first ever stadium show here in America. It'll be all in Texas at Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas. This feels like old school Jim Crockett Promotions and WWF programming and counter programming. Do you love this?
Yes, absolutely.
I bet you would.
I finally got Vince to tell a story a few years ago about more than a few years now. It's bad with time. About when he took the Thanksgiving time slot and from Crockett. It was a pretty good story. Crockett was going to run his first pay-per-view, and all of a sudden Vince decides to run Survivor Series. Just happens to be on the same day. And he happened to talk to the local cable providers and said, by the way, if you carry Crockett, you won't carry WrestleMania next year. And that's that kind of the pressure worked. It's one of the old school techniques. It's done in business all the time. We used to run places taking events taking over territories. You'd have all these guys run free events against WWE. Bill would run different shows in Oklahoma City and run free events whenever WWE was in town or some type of discounted event. He would load up a card and just basically give away tickets trying to hurt their business. This is pretty standard.
Well, something else that's not standard is the role you've been on with some of your picks. We've teased it before here on the show, but you've had a lot of fun. You've been using your social media platform to share some of your picks. Can you tell everybody about the tear you're on? Because people won't believe it, but if they go follow you on social media, well, the proof's in the pudding, right?
I've actually been killing it. I might jinx myself because of this, but I got 5 Best Bets, and that is the name of the Twitter account, at 5 Best Bets. But we put it up the video on our YouTube channel, The Stories of Briscoe and Bradshaw, almost every day. We miss a couple days, but when they do, I put it on our X account, 5 Best Bets, and put it on there. And I put a bunch of prop bets. I put Nerfies, Yerfies, which are runs first inning, yes or no. I also put a bunch of pitchers, strikeout props. And lately, I've just been killing it. I don't know if that's sustainable. Now, I did win last year and the year before. So I've won the last 3 baseball seasons. It's my hobby. It's what I love doing. And it's free. We're not charging nothing. We're not charging to buy picks. We're not trying to build up to that. We're just having fun talking baseball. Me and Gerald Briscoe love talking baseball, so he said, come up with this 5 best bets, and we're up like 15 units the last month. We're about 15 units the 2 weeks before that. It's about 30 units in baseball. Our prop bets have done really well. I mean, we're on an incredible tear right now. This may jinx us and we may not win a game the rest of the season, but we're on an incredible tear. But it's all at 5 best bets. And what I try to do, Conrad, is I always try to put, if I put it out, I don't just put out the bet. I put out the information why I chose that bet. That way you can make your own decision. And on the videos, I do the same thing. Here's why I chose it. Here's why I think this is going to happen. Here's why I think this side's going to win, why this total is going to go over. You know, I look at the wind direction. I look at the precipitation percentage. I look at the barometric pressure. I look at everything. I have a lot of fun betting on baseball. And this is just my hobby that I love doing. And right now it's been winning like crazy. So we got a decent following, but, you know, I think people think there's a hook. There's not a hook. We're just talking baseball.
I can't wait for people to check it out. It really is the real deal. 5 best bets. Check it out on social media. And of course, anywhere you enjoy podcasts, you can check it out on YouTube. It's Briscoe and Bradshaw. I mean, listen, it's one thing if you say after the fact, oh, I'm winning, looky here. But when you're giving the heads up front, it's a whole different ball game, is it not?
100%. And it's 100% transparent. You know, I put the odds on there, and I never put odds that you can't get. Right. So if it's like a minus 130, if you understand gambling, you understand the parlays, or if it's a plus 100, whatever it is, I put the odds you can get. You know, and a lot of bettors will put out there, they'll put odds that, you know, you can't get, or you can't get an 8 on a total. They'll put an 8.5 or something, and they go under. I never do that. I put exactly what you can get off sports books that are available to everybody, and it's 100% transparent. I keep a record of all the bets. When we lose, I come out there and explain I'm on the wrong side of an ass whooping, and when we win, I spike the football and hope that I continue.
I love that about you. We got to talk about the big news over the weekend that, well, it isn't exactly positive news. It's a bit of sad news, and normally we like to start the show off with a lot of fun stuff, but we lost Sabu over the weekend, a true innovator in professional wrestling. Whether you know it or not, a lot of the wrestling that you watch today was inspired by Sabu. Whether they wrestle on Monday nights or Wednesday nights or Friday nights. So much of his innovations and his legacy can be seen in the modern product today. And as folks are listening to this, I want to give you a heads up that we're actually going to be getting together tomorrow morning with friends of the show, Al Snow, Rhino, Blue Meanie, and maybe a few surprise guests to come together and celebrate the career of a true innovator in the professional wrestling industry, Sabu. Head on over right now to our Podcast Heat YouTube channel at podcastheatwrestling.com. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications bell so you don't miss our live Sabu roundtable. It's happening tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. And we're going to be live and taking your questions and sharing and celebrating some great Sabu memories. I know you didn't share the ring with Sabu, but you at least knew who Sabu was and knew what an innovator he was. And what, I mean, when we were talking with Jeff Jarrett earlier today, I think I've decided that he might be pro wrestling's first and most famous daredevil. Is that the right way to describe him?
I think it is. Yeah, definitely. You know, he and Rob Van Dam changed the business. You know, there were a couple things that changed the business. I remember when Too Cold Scorpio and Chris Benoit had that match in WCW around 90, whatever, 3, 4, 5, like that. We hadn't seen anything like that. And it people like, you got to be kidding me. And then all of a sudden you have it times 5 or 6 or 10, whatever it is, multiple, with Sabu and Van Dam. Those guys were freaking incredible. I considered, you know, by the way, I considered Sabu a good friend. I got along well with Sabu. I never worked with Sabu. I wish I would have. In fact, me and Gerald Briscoe just did a thing with Brian Solomon, the Blood and Fire, about his uncle. You know, one of the biggest draws in the history of the business. His uncle was unbelievable. Broke him in the right way. Sabu was a good dude. I mean, a really good dude. But a daredevil, that's the only way you can say it. That stuff he did with Onita in FMW in Japan in the early 90s, that was ungodly what he did. The stuff he did in ECW. And by the way, when you talk about, you know, guys that flip and flop, Sabu and RVD always had a rationale behind what they did. So if you watch them, they do something, they dive over the ropes. The next week they do something, they run and they jump on the ropes and dive over. Then they put a chair there, they run and step on the chair and jump there. They put 2 chairs there. There was always, whether you called it consciously or not, they always had a rationale for what they did and a progression of what they did. It always made sense in some way, which is, a difference between guys who just go out there and want to do crazy stunts and guys who want to go out there and do crazy stunts that mean something. And Sabu did stuff that meant something.
I can't wait to talk about Sabu. We're going to be doing it tomorrow morning at podcastheatwrestling.com. And if you're looking for more Sabu talk, that's where you'll find it. I can't wait to talk about him. I mean, one of my favorites as a kid, I think ECW was built in large part on his back. And
absolutely. Yeah. Did you know him, Conrad?
I met him a few times. Yes.
Just the nicest, most respectful guy. I mean, just a sweetheart of a guy. He always would come up to say hi to me and Ron wherever we were, or I'd go where he was if I saw him first. Just a nice guy.
And a guy who, really think about how crazy that was, that he became a wrestling superstar really without ever cutting a promo.
Right.
I know that other people have done that in yesteryear, but I mean, in the more modern era, in the era of television wrestling, when you can remain a top draw and not talk at all and simply just look up and point to the sky, golly, dude, what a character.
Yeah, what a character and what a great performer. I mean, he was just a great performer. He was safe in what he did. He did some crazy, crazy stuff, but it all somehow made sense in the match. I mean, he was a good draw, just like his uncle. I mean, he was a great draw. His uncle didn't want him to do anything high flying, wouldn't let him do any of it. Trained him like an old school wrestler, wouldn't let him do any of the hardcore stuff. And I guess the first trip to Japan together, he goes, all that stuff I told you, forget about it. He told him, do it, everything that you've been doing when I'm not watching, because his uncle knew what he was doing.
I love it. I can't wait for us to talk a little bit about him in the future. Be sure to check us out, podcastheatwrestling.com. We'll be hooking up tomorrow morning, 9:30 Eastern, and we're going to try to do justice and pay homage to one of the all-time greats who maybe didn't get his just due, and, well, we're going to try to correct that. Try to give the man some flowers. Another underrated performer is our topic today, John. We're going to be talking about all things Fit Finlay. And I think you even mentioned that he might actually have been the greatest heel you've ever seen. Can you give us some context on that?
Yeah, I was thinking about it today about the greatest heels. It's so fun to put your, top 4, your Mount Rushmore of heels together, as if, putting a bunch of half of dead guys that half of them own slaves onto stolen rock of Native American land somehow translates into great wrestlers. I'm not sure how that works, but that was a shout out for Gerald Briscoe, because he loves bashing Mount Rushmore. And I love Mr. Briscoe. So I've always thought that, you had Yusef Ismail was probably one of the greatest first heel of all time. And then you had Gorgeous George, then Blassie and Piper. I think Fit Finlay fits into that category, and none of them were better. I never got to work with Blassie. I met Freddie, but I never got to work with him. Never got to work, obviously, with George or Yusef Ismail. Both passed away long before I was born. But Finlay, to me, I think could be. I don't know anybody better. Could be the greatest heel of all time. And there ain't a doubt in my mind. I saw him. I saw him day after day, night after night. I saw him in the ring. I saw the way we acted around fans. He could be the greatest heel of all time. And if he's not, there's nobody better. There may be people that have tied with him. Nobody's better.
Let's talk a little bit about what made him so great. I mean, I think Fit's dad was an Irish wrestling coach. Is that the way you understand it?
That's right. Irish national wrestling coach, real tough guy, just typical old, Irish tough guy. You see these old hard guys, as they called them, back in the UK and Ireland. And he was one of those guys. He trained Dave up in that, the catch style, the wrestling style, all of that. A lot of political things. It was a tough world growing up when they grew up there in Northern Ireland. In fact, Finlay was in Europe wrestling. It may have been for Brian Dix or Oleg. I'm not sure who it was. I didn't know those guys. I just met some of them. I didn't work for them. I worked mainly in Europe, mainland Europe, not the UK. And they're going to put an Irish flag up. He said, man, somebody in my family could get killed with that. You can't put that up on TV. And they didn't understand the difference. And they said, he goes, you have to fly the Northern Ireland flag. He goes, there's a real problem here. So he grew up in that political maelstrom of, problems between Northern Ireland and Ireland.
Before you went to Europe, what did you know about Fit Finlay by reputation, if anything? Almost
nothing. I'd heard his name, and I'd heard Tony St. Clair's name, and maybe Braun Strowman's, but that was it. I didn't know him. The first night I got to Europe, we were in. Now, I got to Europe because Larry Cameron died in the ring in Bremen the year before, and he died in between rounds against Tony St. Clair. And when he did, none of the Americans came back. And there was speculation as to why that might have happened or why not. I don't know any of that, but none of them came back. And so Otto needed a whole new crew. So Otto brought a whole new crew in, and he took us to Seeboden, which is a resort area in Austria, for a few days to kind of see what kind of crew he had, because he didn't know any of us. Otto, when he got me, I thought he looked at my videos. He just saw my picture, and Jimmy Suzuki happened to be in his office and go, "Oh, John's a good boy." They need one more guy, and Otto goes, "Okay, I take him." That's how I got booked. I got booked there for 2 years off Jimmy Suzuki saying John's a good boy. That there was no merit behind it. It was just right guy at the right time, was in the right place and vouched for me. So Otto didn't know any of the guys, and so he wanted to see what he had. So he had matches there. Steve Wright was there. Alex Wright's dad was kind of coming back on he'd already basically retired, but just kind of came in because he wanted to go to the resort and wrestle a little bit. And Finlay got out there with St. Clair. And until WrestleMania 25 with Shawn and Undertaker, I've never seen a match close to it. Not one. That was the greatest thing. That day, you could tell those guys wanted to put on a show for the Americans to show them how much either better they were than us or how good they were, just period. They had a match that was out of this freaking world. I just remember watching it thinking, if everybody over here can wrestle like that, I need to go home because I can't wrestle like that. It was that good. And literally, I never saw a better match until I saw Taker and Shawn, and I'm not sure it was better. It was just another great one.
It was a classic, and speaking of that, True Classic has one mission: to make sure guys look good and feel even better, and they've nailed the fit, the feel, and the price across your entire wardrobe, and not just tees, but hoodies, jeans, and activewear, everything you need to level up your everyday style. But True Classic isn't just about great clothes. Their brand DNA is built on being highly intentional in everything they do. From creating high-quality essentials to making folks laugh with their hilarious ads, to delivering Ritz-Carlton level customer service, to giving back to the communities they believe in. Every detail is done with purpose. I've been wearing True Classic for a while now, and from the first piece I put on, I knew it was different. It's snug where you want it, it's relaxed where you need it, and there's no weird bunching, no awkward tight spots, just a clean, effortless fit that works. So forget the overpriced designer nonsense. Skip the cheap throwaways. True Classic delivers premium essentials built for real life. Grab yours at Target or Costco, or head to trueclassic.com/STW to get hooked up today. That's trueclassic.com/STW. So, John, for our listeners who've never really checked out European wrestling, can you sort of break down the way it's a little different than what we watch here in America with regards to the rounds or the tournament format or public warnings or yellow cards, or just tell us how it's different from the wrestling we grew up on here in the WWF?
Sure. And if you want to see some of it, look up Finlay versus Marty Jones, and you will see matches that you won't believe what they're doing.
I just watched that last week with Sam Adonis. I'm not kidding.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah. Sam Adonis said, "Hey, this might be the greatest wrestling match I've ever seen. We got to watch it." So when we turned it on, I think I may have seen it like 20 years ago, but it had been so long. I watched it with a whole new fresh set of eyes, a whole new appreciation. I totally co-sign what you just said. We're live here. This was not planned. You randomly threw out the match I just watched with Sam.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. When Finlay debuted, I've talked to old guys. Obviously, I wasn't there because Finlay debuted, I believe, in '74. Because when I got there in '94, we went to Graz, which is Otto's hometown. Otto, and also Arnold Schwarzenegger's hometown. Otto and Arnold were friends growing up. Some great stories there with Arnold and Otto. But one day they were all out. The boys were out. And I said, "What are you guys celebrating?" They go, "It's Finlay's 20th anniversary in the business." So he started in '74. But when he came in, I mean, it literally, from talking to old guys, it sent shockwaves around the wrestling world, throughout the UK and Ireland. He was that good. Guys were saying, you've got to see this kid out of Northern Ireland. He's that good. Everybody knew Finlay. Everybody knew about Finlay. Everybody knew he was coming. Everybody knew how good he was. People wanted to see him. I mean, that's the kind of draw that he had. It was just unbelievable. And the European style, they did this in Europe for sure. In mainland Europe, there were rounds. So most of the time it was 5 rounds. And I believe it was 4 or 5-minute rounds. You have a minute round in between. And so you kind of put the match together based on the round. You know, sometimes you'd want to end with almost getting a pinfall on the guy, or a guy getting a pinfall on you if you're the heel and look like you're in peril. There's ways to work these rounds. Once you figure it out, it's a real fun system to work. But you also get fined from the referee. The referee, especially the heel referee. There was a referee over in Europe, Didier Gop, who's still alive in Paris. Took me to Sacré-Cœur one time on a Christmas Eve mass. I went with him. He gave me a great time in Paris one time. And he would find people, but he's a heel. He'd find like the baby face first, then the heel baby face. Fans would come and pay the fines. And, of course, he'd split the money at the end of the night. So it's like a good extra payday.
I love talking about the way wrestling used to be, and this is kind of fun, at least according to what we could find online. You and Fit first shared the ring as partners a few weeks into your 1994 stint in Europe. You were opposite Franz Schumann and Tony St. Clair in a street fight. I think that ended in a disqualification somehow. And I think Fit was a heel in the CWA in 94, but he was like a cool heel that fans loved. What did you learn from Fit, as well as Schumann and St. Clair, who had tons of experience, both in terms of just general wrestling, but also specific to maybe that German and Austrian crowd?
Well, I can tell you this. There was nothing cool about Fit. Fit was not a cool heel. There was nothing. Absolutely. He was a pure heel. I saw that note that you had. That is 100% false. Finlay broke thumbs in bars. You can ask me the story. I'll be glad to elaborate on that. Finlay would get a pin from a fans that want an autograph. He'd throw it down the aisle. He'd throw it in the trash can. Finlay was a freaking heel 24/7. That's where I got that's where I learned how to be a heel. That's where JBL was born, was learning from Dave. Dave in the ring was always moving forward. I mean, Dave was a 100% heel. The fact that he was an attraction heel or a cool heel, 100% not true. Schumann and St. Clair were also 100% baby faces, and those guys were good. Schumann, especially in Austria, because he was so over there because he's Austrian. I mean, they loved him there. St. Clair was just, St. Clair was what, 10 or 12 year undisputed champion in England. I mean, St. Clair is a terrific baby face. People always ask, why didn't these guys go anywhere else? They didn't have to. I mean, St. Clair didn't want to go to the States. Finlay wanted to later when kind of business played out, but he didn't want to earlier because he was making too much money. Those guys were massive stars. Schumann had endorsements. Schumann was making good money. I mean, those guys were really over. And when you're working with those guys, man, what a pleasure it was. I'm out there with, in my opinion, one of, if not the greatest heels of all time, and I'm out there with 2 incredible Hall of Fame baby faces in Schumann and St. Clair. Man, that was fun. That was a lot of fun when you drew those guys, because I got to work with those guys a bunch because you kind of had 2 levels of heels. Finlay was the number 1 heel. There's no doubt about that. But you also had the big guy heels, because Finlay worked with St. Clair a lot and with Schumann a lot. I worked with Luke Poirier, Rambo a lot, and like Gustl Smeasel and Ulf Herman and those guys, the bigger guys. So I was a different type of, kind of a different classification of heel.
It's really fun to think about, how wrestling listen, I know you said you took issue with the description of Fit being a cool heel, but I think for the smart marks, I think we celebrate the fact that when someone keeps character the entire time, like a few years ago when MJF was showing up at meet and greets and, ridiculing people or flipping fans off or signing over their face or whatever, like that's pure heel stuff. But I do think there is, the same fans who probably bought a ticket to Star Wars and cheer for Darth Vader, they like the heels.
They may. And I understand what you're saying, but I'm telling you, I was there in the day. I mean, he had heat like freaking, like what I hear the original Sheik did, or like Gordon Short. I mean, he had heat that was, they want to kill you heat. I I mean, he could. We had to go get him out of the ring a couple times. He wrestled with Mick McMichael, the referee, worked a match in Vienna. We had to come out of the dressing room to save him. I mean, literally, because security wouldn't help him, and so we had to go there and make sure he got back safe because people were wanting to kill him. I mean, it was not heat where people were saying, "Oh man, this guy's kind of cool. He's been a bad guy for so long." People may look back at that now and put that in hindsight on that, but at the time it wasn't. At the time, people wanted to kill him. He had massive amounts of heat.
One of the things
it wasn't heat where people would like come and just boo. It was viscerally. They would literally get into it about they wanted to stab Finlay. It was that kind of heat.
I love that. He also had a reputation for being hard hitting, and we know everyone listening to this knows that you never shied away from physicality in your matches either. But I wonder, was Fit Finlay a bit like Steve Regal? I mean, I know once upon a time Regal had a line when he was on Tough Enough where he said, "I hit people very hard in safe places." And I think that's pretty smart. I mean, he's acknowledging that, hey, I'm going to lay it into you and I'm going to hit you hard, but there won't be any permanent damage. I mean, that's kind of the goal between this hard hitting style, right? It needs to be believable, but the guy needs to make the next town.
Yeah, Europe was a stiff territory. You know, there was territories that were stiff, you know, territories that weren't. You know, Texas was really stiff. You know, NOW in Japan with Kendo Nagasaki was beyond stiff. But Europe was like that. You know, Europe was kind of a combination between like the hardcore stiffness of, say, Texas and the good mat wrestling of Japan. The Europeans were really good wrestlers, but it was all very snug. There was not a lot of theatrics. There was some, you know, a few pretty good spots. Depends on what ring we're in. We had some rings that were hard as concrete. You couldn't hardly bump in it. Some rings were better. So you did have some differences of matches in different cities because of the rings, but they were all hard hitting and they were all very, you know, very serious. They were all very good wrestling and very stiff type wrestling. And it was, you know, you knew what you're getting into. You know, nobody's going to, you know, I would say we're going to knock out your teeth. Fit knocked out my tooth one time, but for the most part, he didn't.
I do want to ask you about, because I think sometimes fans use the phrase interchangeably, and I want to understand from a wrestler himself, what's the difference between, you know, stiff and snug? I've always understood it to be like there's a way to describe someone who has a safe, hard-hitting style versus someone who hits hard, but they're maybe a little more reckless. What is the difference between stiff and snug, or are they truly interchangeable?
I think it's a matter of how you use the words, how we use the words, and words change over time. You know, the word kayfabe has changed over time, and not to say that it's wrong the way they use it today. If they use it, they're completely differently from how we used it. Snug to me was always somebody that was, you know, in there with you, but wasn't going to hurt you. Stiff to me was somebody that could, you know, is going to black your eye or bust you open, or, you know, could take a reckless shot at you. Maybe not on purpose, but they could be reckless. You know, there's a big difference. The guys used to throw kicks, and you wouldn't have to put up your hands. You wouldn't have to be done because guys are so good at what they did. Nowadays, you see some of these guys, they throw a kick at people's heads and they have to stick up their hands. They have to stick up all their stuff. You know, I think it looks terrible, you know, because the guy throwing the kick doesn't know how to work. And because of that, you've got the guy having to block it and do all this stuff. It has a real chance of not looking good. And I think that's some of the difference between snug and stiff.
I do want to ask you, have you heard the rumor? And again, I wasn't there and I don't think you were, but allegedly back when Fit Finlay was in WCW around the same time Ric Flair was, I think they were scheduled to have a television match. Of course, we know Flair is no stranger to really laying in those chops. We've seen the blood vessels popped on a lot of his opponents' chests, whether it's Ricky Steamboat or Sting or anyone in between. But as the story goes, Flair had a look at Finlay's work and said, "Nah, think I'll take another opponent today instead." Do you buy that?
Nope, not at all.
I don't either.
Not at all. I don't buy it and nothing. I've never heard that, and I don't believe that whatsoever. Flair worked with some of the stiffest guys. He worked with Brody. He worked with Hansen. He worked with all the old tough Japanese guys over in Japan when they had a reason to beat him up and make themselves look good against the NWA champion. Flair never bitched about nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. And he worked with the stiffest guys in the business, and he'd put in 45 minutes to an hour with those guys. So I don't believe that Flair backed out of anything because somebody was stiff or snug.
Yeah, it is interesting though, because I don't even think Flair would be offended with the statement, because in a weird way, it's just putting over how tough Fit is. And we know that Flair is notorious for those stiff chops, but just the idea that the legend grows. I mean, it becomes telephone, telegram, telewrestler. Oh man, he's so stiff, even Flair bowed out. What a great compliment, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Fit would be very happy with that. So would Stan. Stan always thought, Stan Blackberry Window's eye. He goes, be sure to tell everybody back home I did that. People love the legend that growing about being stiff. I will say this that I know is true. WCW came over to Europe, and I was not there, obviously. They came over to Europe, and when they saw Fit, they paid him and told him to go home. That is, guys that were there told me that. They literally paid him to go home. They said, we do not want you on our card. That's that where maybe where that legend came from. But it wasn't because he was stiff. Had nothing to do with stiff. It's because he was so freaking good. They said, you can't come out here and have a match like that among our guys that are over here just trying to do a European tour. You'll kill us. And so they paid him and sent him home.
Well, speaking of paying people, let's talk for a minute here about Cash App. I'm going to put you on the spot here, John. I want to know, who in wrestling do you think is the least likely to pay you back on time? I'm putting you on the spot. Give me a name. Come on.
Teddy Long.
Teddy Long. There we go.
Teddy Long is the cheapest sumbitch ever walked on God's green earth.
We got to get Teddy Long Cash App. I think everybody is going to love Cash App too, because they've got this incredible offer I want to tell you about where for a limited time only, new Cash App users can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real, there's no catch. Just download Cash App and sign up. Then use our exclusive referral code Wrestle in your profile and send $5 to a friend. And then within 14 days, you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. But there's an instant setup. It's so easy. If you don't already have Cash App, what the hell is wrong with you? It doesn't get any easier. It doesn't get any faster. It doesn't get any safer. Cash App truly is safe. It's easy, and it's a fast way to send and receive money to your friends and family. By the way, there's no waiting. If your money doesn't show up right away, well, you're not using Cash App, because with Cash App, you're not going to be waiting around for days, and you know who we're talking about. We've all had to sit through that before with some of those other apps. But Cash App understands it's your money. You shouldn't have to wait. It's also safe and secure. You see, Cash App has your back. If you're about to send money to maybe a sketchy account that might be a scam, you're going to get a warning that pops up. You're going to feel like maybe JBL's got your back and he's ready to hit them with that clothesline from hell. Cash App's looking out for you. And I really like that you can personalize your payments. I've had fun with this when I send money to my friends, because you can use custom text and stamps and backgrounds, and well, we could make it a little fun or embarrassing. I've had fun with it. I'll just say that. I love using Cash App. It's fast, it's safe, and it just makes life a whole heck of a lot less stressful rather. What are you waiting for? This offer, John, it sounds too good to be true. I want to repeat it. For a limited time only, new Cash App users can use our exclusive code and earn some additional cash. It sounds too good to be true, but it's real. There is no catch. Just go right now, download the Cash App and sign up. Then use our exclusive referral code Wrestle in your profile. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Let's talk a little bit about Fit's size. I know this sounds silly, but size has always been a discussion in wrestling. Obviously, he's from yesteryear. He's from a bygone era. And once upon a time, the WWF really looked for the land of the giants. And what I find interesting is when Fit Finlay would go to New Japan, for instance, he'd be called a junior heavyweight. But when he's in Europe, he's just a regular heavyweight. Now, obviously, he could wrestle both styles. I'm not arguing that. But isn't it interesting? Because I don't think anybody would take a look at Fit Finlay today and say, oh, there's your cruiserweight. Like, he was always a heavyweight, right?
Yeah, he always was. He was a big guy. But we had, back then we had, and they do now, not diminishing, what they have in wrestling. We had really big guys. They were 6'6", 300 pounds. And so he wasn't, he had two almost different categories, but he was a big guy. I don't know what he weighed, 230, 240. I mean, that's not a cruiserweight. That's not a junior heavyweight. He was a big dude. You have heavyweight champs of the world that weighed, Vander Holyfield weighed 205. So you got guys that's a pretty big guy.
I mean, Cody had just had this incredibly long run. I don't think he was 240.
I don't think, no, Finlay was bigger than Cody.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's just weird how time has changed, because nobody looks at Cody and says, oh, this guy's a luchador. No, he's not. That's not a cruiserweight. That's a heavyweight. But times have changed. Let's talk about your first singles meeting. I think your first singles meeting with Fit would have been like the 94 World Catch Cup. Tell us about that. Like, is this your first time being in an event like that, and now you're sharing the ring with him? I'm sure there's some guys you get in the ring with and you have instant chemistry. And I'm sure there's other guys you're in the ring and you're like, whoa, that guy's deceptively strong. He's stronger than I thought. And other guys you may think, man, how was he just always in the right place at the right time? This guy's a natural. What was your first reaction to being in the ring with Fit?
The third, and about, hey, he's just a natural. It was so nice being out there, like an old pair of slippers. You know, you knew everything was going to go right. And we didn't talk about anything. I don't even remember who went over, who, you know, if there was a finish. I have no idea. I remember the day they said it was a catch cup, but I believe it was in Hanover, I believe. But what happened was, in Hanover, you had different days that mattered. So you had Damentag, which was, I think, was like Friday or Saturday. It's women's night. You had a championship night where people could challenge something for outside of the tournament, or you might have somebody comes in that has a championship match. Then you would have different nights like over the weekend for Monday. Might be a beer night or something to draw people in, because we worked 7 nights a week, 56 straight days in Hanover. So we worked every single night for 8 straight weeks in Hanover. So you had different nights of the week that were big. The worst night was Wednesday. And because you had nothing special, that was by far the lowest crowd there was. And, I learned an important lesson. Before I went out there for one of the first Wednesdays, Tony St. Clair and McMichael pulled me aside and said, today's more important than the weekend. He goes, because these are our hardcore fans, and they're not going to react like a full house does. So you got to work harder for them. But we can't lose these guys, because these are the ones that buy the season tickets. And so it just kind of set a different, mindset about you. But Otto and Peter had this great rivalry between each other. I feel like they kind of loved and hated each other at the same time. It's that southern-northern rivalry that almost every place has. You got it in the States, you got it damn near everywhere. And Otto is from Austria and Peter is from Germany. And they both thought each other were, from the dumb country, kind of like Texas and Oklahoma think of each other. And Otto would come up on Wednesdays because that was the lowest night, just to mess with Peter. So when Otto had to come up, he'd always come on Wednesday because that was the lowest night. He'd just walk in, just like look around like the big shot. And he wanted to see that Peter had a shitty house. He wouldn't come when Peter was sold out on the weekends. It was a silly rivalry between the two, but it was fun to watch. And Otto was a fun guy, but he came up on a Wednesday. And so what Otto did was he tried to stack the card a little bit, and he put the two big heels, now Finlay being the bigger heel, but me being the new heel, against each other as something to draw a bigger crowd, because Otto was coming. So that's the reason they put us in the ring, was because it was the worst night of the week, and Otto was coming up to mess with Peter on the worst night to see the crowd, and Otto wanted to fill the arena a little bit more full.
I do want to ask you, I can hear how much respect and admiration you had for some of the performers during your European tour like this. But it does feel like it was kind of the exception rather than the rule as far as those who ventured into the United States and enjoyed success. And I feel like some of these guys maybe they didn't even make the attempt, because they were never on my radar.
Yeah.
But when I've asked guys like Jerry Jarrett about Jerry Lawler, I mean, obviously he was hugely successful in Memphis. No one's ever going to deny that. He had a great deal for himself. But I've asked questions about guys like Jerry Lawler. Hey, why didn't he ever try to become a national television star? And I've heard conversations about guys like Bullet Bob in the same way. And the answer I get more often than not is, hey, they wanted to be at home. They didn't want to leave their life. They had their life like they liked it. They wanted to wrestle and make a good living and provide for their family. But it was important that they had that same sense of home life and quality of life. And for years and years, there was discussion that Walter, who we now know as Gunther, that he was never going to come over. He wanted to be at home. He didn't want to relocate to America and all that jazz. We know now he has, and boy, is he enjoying a ton of success. And I can't help but wonder how many of those guys would have fallen into the same category that, had they come over to the United States, would have become much bigger, much wealthier, much more successful stars. But maybe it came at a trade-off that they just weren't prepared to make. Is that the story? Or was Vince did he just not see the vision back then for what this talent could do? Or how do you reconcile that, John? What really happened?
Vince didn't know about him. Was a lot of it, surprisingly. But Vince kept up. Vince famously was very introspective, very big into. He watched WWE. He didn't watch a lot of other stuff. I don't think he knew about him. And a lot of guys like St. Clair would have been a massive star anywhere he was. He'd have been a massive star. He loved being in England. He didn't want to be anywhere else. Schumann would have been a good baby face anywhere. Gustav Smeasel would have been a freaking massive star in WWE. I tried to get him booked, and they had booked Brockus at the same time, and Brockus unfortunately didn't work out well, and it kind of killed any type of thing like that. Gustav was a European strongman champion. He was a judo champion, had tons of charisma. I thought he would. I know he'd have been perfect in WWE, but for some reason Vince, he never heard of him. And now some of the guys like Tony didn't want to come over because they're making a ton of money. They're champion, and they don't want to travel that much. When I signed with WWE, and right when I got done, I first met Vince up in Titan Towers, and as I'm leaving, as we're wrapping up everything, he said, "Anybody over there I should sign?" I said, "Yeah, Dave Finlay." And Vince looked at me and right off the bat said, "Well, should I sign him instead of you?" And I said, "If I were you, I would." And Vince just looked at me, and I said, "I'm serious. He's that good." Vince said, "Really?" He just was shocked, that I told him that. I was being honest. But at the time, Dave had already made either inroads into going to WCW. And back then, Vince would not touch a guy if they were going to WCW. He wouldn't get into a bidding war. Later he would, but he wouldn't then. And so no contact was made.
I do want to ask you about, you have in your notes to me that you once saw a match with Fit Finlay and Brad Armstrong, who most people listening to this would agree is maybe one of the biggest what ifs in the history of wrestling. I mean, everyone who saw his work bell to bell knew he was one of the best that ever did it. But for whatever reason, the narrative on him was always, hey, when the red light was on, maybe he'd be a little camera shy, and the same personality that people saw behind the scenes, they never really got to capture on film. And maybe it cost him a bigger push, if you will, in the WWE, or just America in general. But tell us about, the match you saw with Fit Finlay and Brad Armstrong and why it still left such an impression on you all these years later.
I've told Road Dogg and I told Scott both that it was one of the best matches I've ever seen. I mean, it was unbelievable. They went 7 or 8 rounds. I can't remember how long it was. And I think we went 4-minute rounds in championship rounds. So they went probably 30, 40 minutes or something like that of just action. And it was freaking. It was unbelievable how good it was. Now, there was, I think Brad had knocked out Dave or something, or got it pretty good in Japan. There's a pretty good receipt in the match as well, which both of them laughed about. But we all knew it was coming. But it really did the dive through the ropes. He had that one arm that was a little bit giving, that wasn't quite straight. So he always said when he dived over the ropes, he kind of went, a little crooked. But he did that dive through the ropes one time. It just, the whole match was just, you're sitting there watching, going, this is one of the, when you're watching it, you realize this is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. It wasn't televised to my knowledge. I don't even know it was videotaped. But that thing was, I've told Road Dogg several times, I watched your brother have one of the best matches in the history of the business that nobody knows about, but it was that good. It was unbelievable. Brad Armstrong, that guy was a $1 million worker, man. He was so freaking good. And as you say, he was like Road Dogg. Road Dogg was as entertaining as he could be. And you just happened to get Road Dogg out there on camera. But we never got Brad out there on camera like that.
I do want to ask you, how closely did you follow Fit Finlay's stints in WCW? Because he had a match that to this day, Tony Schiavone says is the damnedest thing he's ever seen. It was Regal and Finlay. It was an uncensored pay-per-view. I mean, you want to show somebody who questions whether or not wrestling is real and they want to throw around the F word with regard to wrestling, show them that match from Uncensored with Regal and Finlay. Those dudes beat the tar out of each other, did they not?
Tough dudes, man. Tough dudes. That was so fun to watch. I'm glad I wasn't in it. I will tell you about the match real quick, and I want to talk about the match, but I'll tell you the match I had with Dave in Wednesday at that Hanover thing. So right off the bat, we had like an American-style match. That way you could go outside the ring and do some more shit, because like I say, Peter was trying to do something to get Otto's attention, So we go outside the ring, and Finlay cracks me with a clothesline. We does. That son of a bitch just knocked out my teeth. And so anyway, as the match is going along, sure enough, I could feel he's knocked out my teeth. So I'm like, that son of a bitch. So anyway, we finished the match. We get to the back, and we had the same locker room all the time. So I had a sandwich that was right by my locker. And Finlay comes in. He goes, "Hey, thanks, John." I said, "Hey, thanks, Dave." He goes, "I didn't catch you with nothing, did I?" I said, "No, never felt a thing." Which is the best thing in the world to say to a guy who just knows he stiffed you. And he goes, I didn't catch you with anything? No, never felt you. Never felt a thing. You didn't touch me. And I just, everybody talked about, you're terrific, man. Like that, just light as can be. Which you could tell he hated. I'm sitting there with my teeth out. And then he goes, "Okay." And he walked out. And when I bit into the sandwich, my whole tooth fell out. And I said, "That son of a bitch knocked out my tooth." And Finlay had gone just around the corner to listen to what I was going to say next. He come around the corner. He goes, "I knew it." He's all happy, and he left.
Have you lived the most interesting life of any man walking God's green earth?
It's been pretty fun. It's been pretty fun. I was at NXT about a year or two ago, and I said, "Hey, is Dave here? I want to say hi." And they said, "No, he left." And so anyway, they text him as he's going to the airport, and he goes, "Tell John I'm sorry that I missed him. Ask him how his tooth is." It was like 20 years later.
My God, I love it.
But that match with Regal, I could have told you they were going to do that before they did it. You knew it. They're two tough guys, and they love to beat each other up. I mean, it's just something. It's like an obsession with some guys. They don't mind getting hit really freaking hard, and they certainly don't mind hitting you hard. You knew it was going to happen, and you knew that those guys had done so much really good stuff in Europe. They wanted to show the American crowd what they were made of. And I think that was just a message. It's like when I first got to Z-Bowden and Finlay and St. Clair put on that classic match. It was just a message to the rest of the boys. That was a message to the rest of the boys. What that was. That hey, we've done it all, and we're pretty freaking good at this. We're also don't mind being real tough guys.
I don't think stiff is the word, but if you're looking to get Fit Finlay stiff, look no further than Blue Chew Max. Maybe you won't knock a tooth out, but maybe you will. I don't know. There's no guarantees with this new Blue Chew Max. It combines the active ingredients of Viagra and Cialis, but into one chewable. It's a combo that acts fast and it lasts. And guys, now you can be ready whenever she or he needs it. You can even get your first month of Blue Chew free. You see, great sex is just a few clicks away. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, and the best part is it's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. So make your life easier by getting harder and discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free. That's right. Try your first month of Blue Chew free when you use our promo code Wrestle. Just pay the $5 shipping. That's promo code Wrestle. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. And John, didn't you say that this would give you like an erection from hell? It's like the clothesline from hell, but a little different.
It's right. They're both very satisfying. I would go more with Blue Chew. Okay,
there you go. It will leave an impression.
That's right.
Let's talk about Fit Finlay.
Hey, and by the way, I don't want to interrupt, but one thing about in Europe was when I got there was the legend of him breaking thumbs. I mean, that's a pretty cool legend, by the way.
Well, I got to hear it. Tell me the story.
Have you never heard that?
No.
Really?
No,
I know I'm not meaning to be incredulous, but yeah, that was one of the big ththings about Finlay. They kind of downplayed it over the years. Finlay would break a guy's thumb, and understand this is going to sound terrible, but remember it was a different time. Guys protected the business, and guys would do things that would, you get arrested for now. But when guys mess with Finlay in bars, I mean, Finlay protected the business. Finlay didn't lose fights, by the way. But he would break a guy's thumb. He'd grab a guy's thumb, and if the guy was saying business is fake, and he would tell his friend, said, yeah, your friend over there, and the guy's now squirming. He goes, can you tell that I'm hurting you or not? And the guy would say, no. He goes, okay, so you don't know if it's fake or not. And Finlay would snap his thumb. Finlay broke some thumbs. Literally broke thumbs. It's a huge legend, which the guys loved him for. You know, people kind of downplay it now because it was mean. That was, you know, it was a different world. Guys were messing with him. Guys were being assholes, telling him wrestling's fake. And Finlay would make a big deal out of it. And he's a legend for it. The guys loved him for that. It was like, he'll break your thumb. It was great.
Something else that's great. I know we're talking about Finlay, but I got to mention this because they just broke this news as you and I are recording. We're live here, pal, somethingtowrestle.com. The Miz is the new host of American Gladiators.
Yes. Yes.
Miz wrote, "The 10-year-old in me is screaming. Huge thanks to MGM and Amazon Prime Video for trusting me with this iconic legacy. We're honoring the original and bringing fresh energy to a whole new generation. American Gladiators is back." Now, I know they relaunched this 15 years ago, but the American Gladiators I grew up on was badass.
It was.
What do you think of the OG American Gladiators?
Oh my God, I watched it religiously. Yeah, just religiously. I thought it was awesome. I always wanted to, I don't know if I wanted to be a competitor or be a gladiator. I'm glad I was neither, but I loved it. I remember it. God, I've seen Ray Holland a few times at some of these shows. I guess she was Zap or who it was. Also the movie with John Ritter. I know all the old American Gladiators. You know, not personally. I had met her at a signing, but I know all their names and everything. I loved it. Congratulations to Miz. It's wonderful. When Miz first came in, I said something about what do you want to be? He goes, I may be the next Ryan Seacrest or something like that. I thought, that's strange. Then I thought, you know what? That's actually a pretty good goal. and he is. He's working out for him.
We got to spend just a minute and talk about a pretty gnarly match that Finlay had back in '99. It was a hardcore match in WCW that went awry. They were doing crazy stunts, and occasionally crazy things happen. He goes through a Formica table, and it cuts him up so badly that the spot actually does nerve damage, and he loses the feeling in the bottom half of one of his legs. And when he comes back for limited matches in 2000, he's not quite the same. But when he comes back full-time in 2006, he hid whatever this injury was so well that anyone who didn't know the backstory wouldn't even be able to tell. And I know that this is such a weird sentence that a guy who's such a hard-hitting dude, the thing that messes him up isn't an errant shot from this performer or that performer. Nerve damage for going through a Formica table, like, golly, dude, what a fluke injury. And to be able to overcome that and come back to a point where people couldn't really even tell, that's a testament to Fitz old school, rub some dirt on it and keep going, is it not?
100%. And by the way, when he came back in 2006, that meant he had been in the business for 32 years at that point. Yes. And almost lost his leg and was covering it up, and you couldn't tell. I mean, that Finlay, to me, you talk about Vader being a what if. Finlay's a what if to me. I wish Vince would have got him. They wouldn't have done as much during the Hogan era because he was all so big on just size. But after that, when Bret Hart and Shawn and Vince realized, the guys that could work, it doesn't matter if they're 6'8", 300 pounds. That era, Finlay, man, that guy could have printed money. Absolutely printed money. I wish the U.S. would have seen him. I read his Wikipedia getting ready for this show today, and almost the first part about Europe was just kind of glossed over. Like he's more famous for going into WCW and all bullshit. That man sold out arena after arena, night after night for 20-something years straight in Europe and England. I mean, that guy did it all over there. I wish the world had gotten to see that Finlay rather than the Finlay in 2006 was great. But that Finlay in early 90s, that was an alien. That guy was different level.
It is interesting to see how differently your opinion as a wrestling fan is about Fit Finlay. And I think a lot of that comes from how long you've been watching wrestling and how old you are. Because depending on when you first see Fit Finlay, you may know him for different things. Like, from what I understand, when the WWF bought WCW, Fit is one of the agents / producers / coaches that comes over. And it seems like almost immediately he endears himself to everyone on the roster. So I think there is a contingent of wrestling fans who, if they missed all the European stuff and they missed all the WCW stuff, they may have first heard about him through the newsletters as being an agent. Tell us about Fit the agent.
Fit was one of the best agents we've ever had. And, I guess he's still an agent, so he's not one of the best we ever had. Yeah, he's still there, I guess. I guess that unless I go to NXT, I see Dave's either there or somewhere around. But he was fantastic. And what he would do is Fit's a really smart guy. He would tailor matches to people's strength. A lot of agents are trainers. When they train people, they train them all the same way, according to what your strengths are, not according to what their strengths are, the people that you're working with. Finlay would look at them and would ask them questions. What do you like? Similar to what Vince would do, by the way, when he wanted to create characters. Like, what do you do? What are your hobbies? All this different stuff. Finlay would figure out what this person's interest is, because that's where their passion lies, and that's how Finlay would build their character around their passions, about what he knows they can do. And he'd make their moveset in accordance to what they could do, not in accordance to what a robot can do, that you just need to, assembly line, put these guys out and teach everybody to do this, graduation, go have fun. Finlay tailored everything. He was, I guess still is, a terrific agent.
Why do you think some talents can transition so well from in-ring to being an agent and maybe others can't? I'm not going to disparage any other names, but it does feel like there's some other great legendary in-ring performers who most people would put on a list of the best in-ring performers of all time. And maybe they tried their hand at being a producer and they were there for like a cup of coffee and it was just not for them. But then other guys like Fit, it feels like he just he was great at in-ring and now he's great at telling people how to be great at in-ring. It's coming up with finishes and things like that. What is the differentiator between the two?
It's something, you see it in sports. Michael Jordan never became a coach, and maybe he could have been a great coach. Larry Bird was a great coach, but you had guys that came out that tried to coach that were great players, and they never were great coaches. And you have some guys who were not good players that end up becoming great coaches. So it's just, there's not a correlation, I don't believe. I believe it helps that you have 3,000 or 4,000 matches and you drew money. I think that makes a big difference. Finlay was a top guy everywhere he's been. And there's a difference in putting a match together that is a good match and putting a match together that draws money. And, that's kind of hard to do unless you've done it. There are guys that can do it, but it's harder. It's harder unless you've been there. Finlay's been there. And I think that's one of the differentiators between him and other people. I don't know exactly what it is that makes a great agent out of either a great worker or a so-so worker, because I've seen both become great agents. I've seen, great workers become horrible agents, and I've seen so-so workers become great agents. So there's not really a commonality. It's just something in people that's very analytical. And I think Finlay is that. He's very analytical.
I do want to ask you a little bit about when you had Fit as an agent. I know that there were a lot of other agents, but what was it? I mean, do you remember him giving you any advice that was different than what other agents were doing? Was his approach to agenting a match, at least for you, different than? Or do you remember there being any nuggets along the way that you thought, man, I hadn't thought of that, but I'm going to use that? And then we may remember what that suggestion was?
Yeah, Finlay was always about moments of emotion during matches. And that was a differentiator between him and other agents that didn't understand that. They'd want to put together the match and they'd want to put together the move set and about, maybe the emotion of what you're selling, maybe a story, but not the emotion of the match. For example, at this point, you're going to take a bump down, but crawl toward them. It will show that they're in peril. Little things in a match. When Dave was working, I learned so much from watching him. He always moved forward as the heel. It always showed there was always some type of peril that was coming, even when he's selling. Occasionally he'd beg off and do some stuff, but for the most part, he was always moving toward the babyface. Now, for one, that's how you feed them, but two, that's also is a way that you always are pressuring them, always pressuring them. The fans may not know that's consciously, but they see it and they're like, God damn, that's like Jason Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees. No matter what you do, he's still just coming at you. Finlay was like that. I learned so much from that watching him, but when he would agent, he would come up with emotional ties during a match of, okay, this will help you get heat here if you'll react this way. And it wasn't about a move. It was about a transition to a move. And that was the one difference I always saw with Dave. Of course, we're very good friends. And, we talked a lot of the same language because we're together so much, especially in Europe. We lived not together, but lived in caravans, right beside each other for, 2 years. And Dave was completely different in that respect.
I do want to ask you about a match in particular because, or I guess before we get there, I should mention that one of the more fascinating things about Fit, at least from my perspective as a fan, is that he was this gruff, badass in-ring performer that everyone feared in Europe. He's walking around breaking dudes' thumbs. He's the king of the hardcore division. He's got the crazy spiked shoulder pads in WCW. Then he comes over and does a great job, I guess, behind the scenes as an agent. And then he's assigned to the women's division. And there's even speculation that perhaps that was done as a rib, because when you think about Fit Finlay, well, you respectfully don't think about him being an agent for the ladies. But I guess he was, and he didn't succeed. He excelled. Why do you think that was, John?
Well, I think a couple things. One, Vince ribbed people he liked. So it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to screw with this guy because I don't like him. Now, Vince would just fire him if he didn't like him. But Dave was like the guy, hey, we're going to put on the women's division. Let's give it to the big, tough Irishman. It's just funny. It's just funny at the time because the women didn't wrestle. It wasn't like Tori and Stacy's fault. They were great athletes. Tori and Stacy both were great athletes, but they weren't trained to wrestle, and that wasn't their job. So when you started bringing in more great athletes and trying to create this women's division, it's like, oh, give it to Dave. And, it's kind of the tough Irishman. What's he going to do with it, And Dave took them and said, do you guys want to learn how to work? And they said yes. And Dave is as much responsible. Now, I know Trish and Lita, that big match at Raw, unbelievable. It's a historic match. Congratulations to both those ladies. If that hadn't succeeded, it would have been years before the women's division would have come along. But a lot of that behind the scenes was built by Fit Finlay. I mean, Fit Finlay is as much responsible for the women today as anybody in the business. He built that women's division. It was remarkable what he did.
What's fascinating is you mentioned them, gals like Stacy Keibler, who many people thought, hey, she'll always, quote unquote, just be a valet. She'll never, but I mean, she started to show marked improvement with Fit Finlay. All the ladies got better with Fit Finlay. And then in July of 2002, there's a pretty famous match that, well, maybe it's famous for all the wrong reasons. So Trish was teaming with you against Chris Nowinski and Jackie Gata, and it's become, I don't know, infamous because of how off the rails the match went. And there's suggestions in the newsletters that perhaps this was the case because there was a different agent and the agent wasn't Fit Finlay. Do you remember that match? And I'm sure you'd like to forget it, but what the hell happened?
It was so bad. Trish mentioned it in her Hall of Fame speech and looked over at me. It mentioned how bad it was. It was the worst match I've ever not only been a part of, I've ever seen. It was so bad. It was in Philadelphia of all places. So I had an appearance during the day, and I don't know who the agent was. It wasn't Dave. To this day, I saw some notes you sent and said there was an agent there. I don't remember that person being an agent. I don't remember anybody being an agent because I had an appearance that day and I left. I came back and I said, hey, you guys got all the match worked out? And they said, yeah. And for some reason, they were going to call a lot of it in the ring. And, Trish was brand new, but Nowinski and Jackie had no business doing anything, calling anything at all. The match was so freaking bad. It was horrible. I wanted to crawl into a hole. I wanted to crawl into the ring. I wanted to leave. I came in at the very end, and I remember I just hit Nowinski with a boot about as hard as I could, and I just got out of the ring. I walked through Gorilla, and I was so depressed. I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit the business. It was that bad. It was the worst match I've ever seen. And Vince looked up at me and took off his glasses, and he looked at me and goes, I'm sorry. Literally, Vince apologized to me. It was that bad. It was fucking abomination was how bad it was. And I think Jackie went to Vince and, was crying, and, Vince wasn't selling nothing. He was furious. I mean, absolutely. And he should have been. I don't know what happened, but Finlay wasn't the agent. I got back from an appearance that day, so I didn't have a chance to put the match together. I thought it had been put together. By the time I got out there, I was the one veteran. And I think Trish had been around just a little bit, but nobody had helped her with it. And it was, God almighty, it was an absolute abomination how bad it was.
Worst match of your career?
Yes, 100%. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And it was in Philly of all places. It's like the one place you have a good match, they boo you. Yeah. And we had the worst match that possibly in the history of wrestling in Philadelphia. And I had to, yeah.
Well, hey,
it was so bad. Vince apologized to me when I walked through the gorilla. I was so depressed. I just wanted to get my stuff and leave.
Is that your first apology you got from Vince about a match?
Yes. Oh yeah, the only one. Yeah. Yeah, he literally like, I'm sorry I put you out there. Literally, it was just like you could see he felt for me because I'm like, oh my God.
When you finally get your big singles push, was Fit a big part? Was he one of your agents, one of your go-tos?
He was one of my go-tos. Yeah, I can't remember who the agent was the most for the matches. Fit was a huge part of it. When we did the barbed wire steel cage match in Pittsburgh, he was the agent. And we had to go over the match the night before to make sure that the stunt worked. I was going through the ring with a choke slam and want to make sure it worked. Well, I get up on the ropes. It's like 11 o'clock midnight the night before. Finlay's in his suit. He'd had a few cocktails. He comes over, and I get up on the top rope, and they're going to choke slam me through to make sure it works. And Kevin Dunn yells, "Stop, stop, stop." Said, "If John gets hurt, we got no match tomorrow." He goes, "Somebody else has to do it. John can't do the stunt, not to see if it works." And so I said, "Okay, you're right." I climbed down, and they asked Ellis to do it, who did the stunt. He goes, "Well, I'm not the same size. I don't think it'd be a good idea." And so Ellis wouldn't do his own stunt. So I'm like, "Ellis, is this going to be okay?" And that's when he told me, he goes, "I think you'll probably be okay." And I go, "You know how many caveats are in that sentence that you just said that I could basically die?" And Finlay goes, "I'll do it." And so Finlay's had a few cocktails in a suit, climbs up there and gets chokeslammed by Big Show off the top rope through the ring at midnight the night before in Pittsburgh. So, yeah, he was definitely the agent that night.
AD is with us here live on YouTube, and he said, "I so want to see that match now." And a few minutes later, he says, "Well, just saw clips." Oh, yeah, maybe the worst.
It was so bad. I'm not making it up. I'm not like being a perfectionist saying, "Hey, that match was horrible," and it really was just kind of a little bad. It would have to improve to suck.
I love that. By late 2005, it becomes official that Fit Finlay is going to be returning to the ring in a more full-time capacity, but he's also going to pull double duty. He's going to keep his producer job. When you first heard this news or this rumbling, were you excited?
Oh, of course I was. Yeah, I'm a big Dave fan. We had so much fun together. And, Dave's one of those guys you want around. He's, believe me, he's one of the best ribbers in the history of the world. In the history of the world. He's so much fun. And I was glad he's just doing more. And I wanted the world to see him because I knew how good he was. And I knew he had the bum leg. And I knew he was older. But still, I knew he was still Fit Finlay. And I wanted the world to see him because I wanted them to see what I had seen that caused me to fall in love with the perfection of the art in Europe.
Let's talk a little bit about what a milestone that is, what an accomplishment that is for him to come back. It's one thing to be able to come back after the injury to his leg. It's another to be able to convince Vince McMahon to give you a shot to come back, considering his age, his long layoff, and then getting cleared medically with the bad leg. I mean, it felt almost impossible that he'd be able to overcome all of that. But I guess Vince had a soft spot for Fit and allowed him the opportunity. And boy, he took the ball and ran with it, didn't he?
Yeah, Vince had more than a soft spot. He loved Dave. I mean, he absolutely loved Dave. Everybody does. He's just one of these good guys that everybody just has this warm feeling toward, kind of like Dusty, and nobody else could probably talk Vince into that. But Finlay was being Finlay, and Vince Irish. There's like a lot of association there, and I think Vince really looked up to Dave and he wanted to give him the opportunity.
The ball really gets going for your feud with Fit Finlay in 2007. Of course, there's going to be the whole Mr. McMahon's illegitimate son storyline, and that's where it's revealed that Vince actually sired Hornswoggle. And as we'll get into, it turns out to be a situation where Finlay is going to be your WrestleMania program. When did you know that you were going to work Finlay at WrestleMania?
I don't remember exactly. I remember getting involved in the Vince McMahon storyline. You know, I was always, kind of close to Vince. You know, I always, kind of thought I was what Vince would be if he was in the ring. I always felt the way he booked me, was kind of, Vince was, I was kind of his proxy, I always thought. And I guess that's right. I've never talked to Vince about that, but that's how I felt. And so when I got involved in the storyline, I was very excited. By the way, I'm going to see Hornswoggle this weekend, and I'm going to I've got a leprechaun that I've been hitting trash cans. I'm going to see Hornswoggle this weekend. I'm going to hit that little bastard with the trash can and hopefully give him a concussion. But I was really excited because I got to work with Vince, and Hornswoggle was awesome. It was so much fun. You're out there with Horns, out there with a leprechaun. You're out there with, in my opinion, the greatest heel of all time. And you're in a storyline that involves the owner of the company. It doesn't get a lot better than that.
No, it does not. Before we talk about your big comeback, I do want to ask, you did an interview in 2008, early 2008, where you were talking with the Long Island Press, and you're covering all that it took to get back and why you're coming back and how you weren't really happy with the way it had ended. And I guess, this begs the question, since you had some back issues, there's discussion at the time that you had some like experimental treatments on your back. What were you doing to keep yourself in ring shape here?
Yeah, it wasn't, I don't know how experimental it was. It was, I guess, new age. It was a traction machine basically. And they put you in this and they give you all kinds of traction and all kinds of stem that goes with the traction. I haven't seen a lot of it lately. Of course, I'm not into the medical rehab world, so I don't know what they're doing. So maybe it phased out. It wasn't worth anything. I don't know, but it seemed to help. Something helped. Maybe the layoff helped. I don't know. I've gotten stem cells recently. My shoulder seems to have come back. Maybe the layoff, taking a couple weeks off when I got the stem cells, did it as well. I don't know. I'm not going to give credit. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what worked, but something worked, and my back got to feeling better. And it may have been the layoff and losing weight and did it, or it may have been the medical treatments that I did, because I did go through all the treatments. It was a traction type machine that tracks you, put stem in there and do all kinds of stuff. As at the time it was groundbreaking stuff. I'm not sure what worked. Something worked, but it may have been the time off.
Well, I'll tell you something that works all the time, and that's eating better with our friends at Factor. Make this your best season yet with nutritious 2-minute meals from Factor. You see, eating well has never been this easy. Just heat up and enjoy, giving you more time to do what you want. Get outside instead of prepping and cooking indoors. Factor meals will arrive fresh and ready to eat, perfect for any active lifestyle. And with 45 different weekly menu options, you can pick gourmet meals that fit your goals. Choose from Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, and more. Factor powers your day with satisfying breakfasts, on-the-go lunches, premium dinners, and guilt-free snacks and desserts. It's easy to savor more this spring. Factor meals pack in the flavor with none of the fuss. I'm a big believer in this. The wife and I have been using it for years. Even when they're not advertising, we're still rocking with Factor. I know that goes true for Double J and a lot of guys in the locker rooms these days. It's never been easier to have a fast and nutritious meal. And again, looking for whatever you're looking for. You're trying to pack on some protein? No problem. Maybe you're trying to rock the keto diet? No problem. Maybe you're trying to keep your calories low. Man, whatever it is, Factor can help. Go get started right now at factormeals.com/wrestle50off and use our code wrestle50off. You'll get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code wrestle50off at factormeals.com/wrestle50off for 50% off plus free shipping. So, John, I want to talk about this cage match. It went down February 18th in Anaheim. It's Vince versus Hornswoggle in a cage. Now, it was never really a match, I guess, because Hornswoggle comes out with Finlay. You're going to get involved. You're going to slam the cage door on Finlay. You're going to handcuff him to the corner and make him watch as Vince is using the belt on Hornswoggle. This is silly and fun. I'm sure you were having a blast. Tell us about this cage match.
It was awesome. You're out there beating a dwarf with a belt. I mean, it's so preposterous. It's just, as one of these old wrestling guys, this is stuff you live for, do stuff, the fun stuff. You can have a million matches, but you do get to do a fun stuff like this. This is like, oh, great. I can't wait to do something like that. At one point, I grabbed Hornswoggle, and I'm about to throw him like this on the we used to call it the sack of shit, where you throw it over the head. they don't call it that anymore because you can't say sack of shit. Now it's a fall away slam or whatever. In fact, the move off the second rope was the super sack of shit, is what we called it.
Oh my God.
They can't call it that either. But anyway, I was about to give Hornswoggle the sack of shit, and I'm going to throw him into the cage, and Hornswoggle's going, the pole, the pole, the pole. And I look back, and there's like the pole there, and I thought, I'm probably not going to kill you, but I'm not sure. So he was so worried. Anyway, it was funny, him worried about hitting the pole. But Hornswoggle did great. I booted him down. Hornswoggle was great. Everything he did was awesome. It was fun working with him because he would react in certain ways that were so funny. And I thought Fit was great. I mean, Fit screaming for his son like that. I mean, it was really good what Fit did. Whether anybody bought that the leprechaun was either Finlay's son or Vince's son, I'm not sure, but I loved it.
Even Meltzer, who's not often giving away glowing reviews, he writes, the emotion was strong because Finlay was absolutely fantastic in the corner, struggling.
He was good. Finlay was really good.
JBL came out with this stoic heel face and destroyed Hornswoggle, laying some shots into Finlay, but he mostly made Finlay watch. Hornswoggle was kicked, elbow dropped, and given a fall-away slam into the cage and left laying. For emotion, JBL and Finlay, plus Hornswoggle's facials, made this way more dramatic than most WWE angles. But maybe the crowd wasn't totally buying it. I mean, even the announcers are selling it in a hushed tone. But I am surprised it didn't get over better live. At least when you're watching on TV, it didn't feel like the sound came through the way we maybe expected it. But I just assume you were having a blast when they sit you down and say, okay, here's what we got in mind. You're going to take this little fellow and sack of shit him into the cage. I feel like you would have been like, can we do that early?
Yeah, can we rehearse that?
Yes. Let's do a walkthrough right now. Gosh.
And I love the way that Meltzer always puts something negative at the end. Like
the
one time he said, when I worked with Cena, he goes, the crowd really loved it. It wasn't a good match.
The crowd was on their feet. It was a sold-out crowd on their feet with tons of emotion, but it wasn't very good.
Right, yeah. You got to say something negative at the end.
Of course, the next week, Vince is going to come out for a new storyline twist. He's going to say that Hornswoggle was badly injured in the attack by JBL. Vince is upset that JBL beat up his son, saying he wanted to give his son tough love, and he contacted JBL to come in to only make sure Finlay didn't interfere in family business. But JBL was never supposed to hurt his son. He's apologizing to Hornswoggle and made a point that he never admits he's wrong or apologizes, but here he is. And he tells you to come out and apologize, and you come out, and you've got this cold, stoic look, and you're saying you're sorry that you didn't do it sooner. I love that line. What a great line. My God.
You know 100% who wrote that. There's no doubt about it. That's all Vince.
BKM, yes.
Yeah.
Of course, he then tells Vince that Hornswoggle is not your son and that he's Finlay's son. And now Vince is mad at Hornswoggle, but he's telling Vince that Hornswoggle didn't know. And it was Vince's family who created this ruse to fool him. Well, why they'd want their inheritances fractioned off is never really explained. But you're insinuating that perhaps Linda, Stephanie, and Shane, and even Finlay all knew. Can you make heads or tails of this storyline, or was this just silly shit that we had to move on from?
I couldn't make heads or tails then. I thought it was great. I didn't care. I didn't care at all. And I understand stuff's got to make sense. And if you kind of boil it down, you can kind of start, figuring it out and piecing it kind of together. I didn't care. I had this little guy, Hornswoggle, who was incredibly charismatic, who was fun to work with, who sold like crazy. And I had this great talent in legendary talent in Finlay. I enjoy, and I'm working with the balls out there. It was just fun. I'm out there loaded with talent in the ring. It was so much fun to be out there with those guys that I'm not even thinking about, okay, now did Linda know? Now did Shane know? Did Stephanie know? Now was Finlay in on it with Linda and Shane? And I'm like, I didn't care. Well, and I'm not diminishing the fact that the storyline either made sense or didn't. I didn't give a shit.
Well, it didn't. And even Meltzer would say, and Vince finally wanted out, but they had no idea how to get out. But they do cut to a scene after Vince is in the ring with Fit Finlay. They're going to show on the screen where you're in the hospital room with Hornswoggle. Now it's acknowledged that Hornswoggle is actually Finlay's son, and you're telling him, or he's telling you rather, don't hurt him. And of course, you're going to slap Hornswoggle across the face. He's going to start whimpering. It does look like child abuse, even though Hornswoggle is an almost grown-ass man. You turn the lights out, and you can use your imagination. That you're.
Hey, Finlay tried to sell Hornswoggle to a drunk businessman in Thailand one time. I don't want to hear about child abuse.
Well, I got to hear that story.
Well, okay, yeah, I'll be happy to tell you. So Finlay is in Thailand, and Hornswoggle realizes that there's some drunk guy that Finlay's talking to, and finally he realizes that Finlay has sold him to this drunk businessman. You know, Finlay's the biggest ribber in the world. They were going down a volcano one time, and he like tried to. He said he's going to hold on to him. He's like pushing Hornswoggle in a volcano, an actual volcano. But Finlay is in a bar, and he's got this Thai businessman who thinks he's buying Hornswoggle. So finally Hornswoggle goes, hey, mama, you can't sell me. You can't sell another human. That like breaks like every human rights law in the world. You literally cannot sell a human. I'm a human. I'm a small human, but I'm a human. You can't sell me. And Finlay says, we'll get you back. So finally Hornswoggle finally just left. But yeah, Finlay had sold Hornswoggle to a Thai businessman.
I mean, do you remember what? I mean, did he do it by the pound, or how does that work?
That's a good question. I don't know. I've got to ask Dave about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering, did he carry around a little scale? Did he walk in with Crash Ollie's scale and be like, well, little people are selling for X dollars a pound today? So
that's a good question. So I don't know what he got the price on, what he based the price on.
I mean, you don't think Hornswoggle has like a barcode on his ass or nothing, do you?
I wouldn't doubt it at all.
I'll find out next week.
Yeah, I will find out next week because like my Hornswoggle replica has like barcodes on him, so I wouldn't doubt at all that Hornswoggle has a barcode on him somewhere. And hopefully they're selling by the pound because that's a lot more than selling by the height.
All righty. I do want to ask you. You've got a story about, and I think maybe we've got a link in the description for today's show.
Yeah,
a video that's on YouTube about something that happened in Mexico. Tell us about this.
It's the greatest video that I've ever put together. So I found out that WWE had the footage, but it wasn't WWE didn't have it. The cameraman had it. So I called up the WWE. I said, "Can I have this footage?" They go, "We didn't know we had it." He said, "What are you gonna do?" And I said, "I want to put it on the show." And Kevin's like, "Go ahead." I said, "Well, it's shot on a WWE camera, so I guess it's technically yours, even though the cameraman owns it." So I'm the only one that has the video other than the cameraman. So I put it on our YouTube channel. But what happened is Scott Aycock, who was from Kentucky, was the security guy, and he's talking to Finlay one day on a plane ride, and he says, "Man, I'm going to kill that little bastard." And Finlay said, "What'd he do?" He goes, "He just keeps fucking with me. He's all the damn time. He's all he does is mess with me. I walk around the ring. He's underneath the ring. He'll reach out and untie my shoe, or he'll grab my shoe and tie it to the pole, or he just constantly messes with me. He's always messing with me. I want to kill him." So Finlay says, he's scared of chickens. And Scott says, "What?" Now they're on the plane talking about this. And Scott says, "How do you know that?" And so Finlay, get this about Finlay now. Finlay would keep in his phone what people are scared of so he can rib them if he needs to. This is legendary stuff. So Finlay had seen a scene with Great Khali where you had chickens. And Hornswoggle, I've got him on this video that's a link on here. It's on from our show. Hornswoggle looks at this chicken like sideways and jumps. So Finlay puts it in his phone. Hornswoggle's scared of chickens in case he ever needs it. So he needs it now because Scott wants to kill him. So they're going to like Mexico City or something, or Guadalajara or somewhere in Mexico. They have a big arena. And he says, he's scared of chickens. He goes, "What do we do?" He goes, "Get a chicken." So they asked Davey Coates, who's the hookup. He says, "Hey, would you get us a chicken?" He goes, "Yeah, you want boiled or fried?" He goes, No, we need a real chicken." And he said, "What?" He said, "Get us a real chicken." So Davey could get anything. Davey's one of those great, he's one of the guys been around forever. Davey's a good dude. His kid now works with the company as well. Good young man as well. Dave's a wonderful guy. So Davey goes out in Mexico and gets this freaking rooster that looks like a freaking fighting rooster. It's like a freaking Mike Tyson rooster. It's like this big white rooster. We got the whole video, by the way, on the YouTube thing. It's on there. I've got the video. And so they get this rooster. Hornswoggle's underneath the ring. I think Matt Cardona is in the ring. And Davey comes out. and Hornswoggle underneath the ring, they had mic'd it up and put cameras and lights underneath there so they could see it, what happened. They get this rooster and throw the rooster under the ring with Hornswoggle. They're in a sold-out arena in Mexico. Well, Hornswoggle sees it, freaks out. So you see the rooster chase Hornswoggle around. You see the Hornswoggle chasing the rooster. Hornswoggle picks up a kendo stick and threatens the rooster verbally. Verbally threatens the rooster. He's going to kill it. And so he's like the rooster. So finally the rooster gets out from underneath the ring, goes in the crowd. The crowd throws it back in, and somebody throws it back under the ring. So now Hornswoggle and the rooster are back under the ring again. So, yeah, this all happened underneath a sold-out ring in Mexico City. This was what was going on underneath the ring.
My God. You've got in the notes here that Finlay had a matchstick rib.
Oh, yeah, this was terrific. So we're in let's see, we're in Hanover, because we're staying right outside of the locker room. And one of the guys, a lot of young ladies, that wanted to see the wrestlers. So they'd left a note at his caravan. Something had happened, like his girlfriend or something tried to check to see if he was being faithful or something. Anyway, they leave a note on his caravan and say, "Hey, I want to meet me in the bathroom." It's so o'clock because we had one bathroom to go to that was, we didn't have bathrooms in our caravans. We parked there. We had to go inside for the bathroom. So anyway, he gets nervous about this note. So this goes on for about a week. Well, finally, the note gets worse and worse and worse. Like, hey, if you don't meet me, I'm going to burn down your caravan. So a matchstick was left on the note. So now at night, he's like, oh my God, I've got this crazy rat that's wanting to meet me in the bathroom. She's going to burn down my caravan. So finally, he spent all day in waiting to see who left the note. So he hid all day in the arena, and he saw it was DDA Gop. And I don't know for sure if Finlay was in on it, but he knew about it. And so anyway, he grabbed DDA, and it looked like he was going to rough him up for a minute. DDA had a blade on him, and DDA I thought was going to pull his blade. So a bunch of us actually rushed in because we thought this is about to escalate beyond what we need if somebody gets stabbed and dies.
Hey, speaking of imminent danger, you've gotten your notes. I've never seen these words touch in wrestling before. Finlay tried to push someone in a volcano.
Hornswoggle. Hornswoggle.
But a volcano, John.
Yeah, they were overseas and they went to visit a volcano, and Hornswoggle was right near it, and Finlay had pushed him to where Hornswoggle couldn't back up, and Hornswoggle panics, and Finlay thinks he's got hold of him, but literally it's a volcano, and Hornswoggle thinks he's going in, and Hornswoggle panics, and Finlay won't let him out. He's like, I'll catch you. I'm going to catch you. Yeah. So yes, Finlay tortured Hornswoggle. And Hornswoggle loved it because he loved Dave. They were in France one time, and they had Hornswoggle would hide under the ring. And he'd climb out from under the ring, and he'd go up, and then Khali would do something. And, of course, you'd see this great, huge Khali, and you see Hornswoggle down below like he's going to fight him or something. Hornswoggle would pull out tennis balls because he told Dave he could juggle. So Dave ranged this spot, and then Hornswoggle would start juggling. Well, Khali would play like the dumb giant and go and look at it, and and get kind of mesmerized by it. Then somebody would jump Khali, and they go do something else. Well, then Finlay or somebody threw the tennis balls into the crowd. So they come up to Hornswoggle the next day. Finlay did, and said, "Hey, we've got to tell you that those tennis balls were like legit French Open tennis balls, and so they're like whatever it was, like $100 a piece or something." And so you owe us $300 for those tennis balls. So anyway, the next night they did the same thing. So the next night Finlay says, okay, you're up to $600 you owe us for tennis balls. And so this goes on for like a week. Well, now Hornswoggle's up to like $1,000 in tennis balls. So Hornswoggle's trying to get the tennis balls back from the crowd because he thinks he's having to pay for them because these are French Open tennis balls. And said that he's got to get them back from the crowd. And Finlay's throwing them in the crowd. Hornswoggle's trying to go get them. Well, finally at the end of the week, Hornswoggle's just in a funk. He's all depressed because he thinks I'm not going to make any money this whole tour. He owes $1,000-something in tennis balls. So he tells Big Show. He says, Big Show said, "What's wrong, Hornswoggle?" He goes, "Man, I owe all this money for tennis balls." And he goes, what do you owe? And he said, for tennis balls. He goes, they're like legit French Open tennis balls. They cost like $100-something a piece or whatever Finlay said they were. And he goes, there's been like $1,000 something worth of balls lost. And Big Show blows a gasket. He's a good dude. He goes, I'm going to take care of this. So Big Show goes storming to the production office, opens up the door, and he tells Finlay, this is bullshit. You're taking advantage of this young guy. And Finlay says, hold on. Let me tell you what's happening. And so when he told Big Show what's happening, Big Show walks out and he tells Hornswoggle, goes, sorry, nothing I can do. You owe $1,000 something.
Sorry, nothing I can do. That's so great.
Finlay is one of the best ribbers in the history of the world. He loves a good rib. All those guys in Europe did. I mean, they lived for ribs, and they ribbed the Americans incessantly because we're the new guys.
What about a spoon? You got a spoon rib?
Oh, my God. That was the best ever. I don't know if everybody's seen this on video. You ever see the spoon game?
I have, but describe it to those who
Yeah, so what the spoon game is Finlay and those guys would do it, man, and it was this thing's legendary. So you get some guy, he's pretty tough, pretty jacked up or something, said, man, we'll play a spoon game. So you put a spoon in your mouth, and the guy in front of you would lower his head, and then you take the spoon in your mouth, and you hit him on the head with the spoon. Well, the guy couldn't see you hit him. So what you do is you hit him with the spoon with your mouth, and then the guy would go on you and hit you on the head with the spoon on your head. Well, what Finlay would do is he would stand behind the guy with the spoon, and when the guy in front of him would lower the head, Finlay would reach forward and just tap him on the head with like a mallet, like that. And so the guy would you can see the guy go, oh, fuck, that hurt. Anyway, look up, and then they do it again, and then Finlay would do it, and he started hitting him harder and harder, and finally Finlay just like, bam, hit him on the head with the fucking mallet. And the guy's like, my God, how are you hitting me so hard? The guy'd be all lumps on his head, busted open. But that was a spoon game.
One of the all-time great games. You can find people playing that silly shit on YouTube. And by the way, if you're looking to advertise on YouTube, look no further than Envision. I've had a lot of success with my buddies over at Envision Marketing Consultants. Specifically, I'm talking about my man, Eric Nichols. Anytime I've had one of my other entrepreneur friends say, hey, man, I'm looking to advertise online. Who handles your advertising online? I always say, I got a guy. Well, I'm actually loaning Eric my domain, conradsguy.com. And if you're a small business owner and you're looking to grow your online footprint, you're looking to get some more leads, well, look no further than Eric Nichols. Your leads will go up. Your understanding of what you're buying is going up. Just your overall understanding of the space will go up. And I'm talking to you if you're a small business owner who's looking to do SEO or pay per click or targeted display. Maybe you're looking to get some streaming ads on Hulu or YouTube or even Amazon. Well, if your company's doing any of that or they want to, conradsguy.com can hook you up. Let my man Eric take a look. He has decades of experience. And most importantly, I trust that Eric and his team are staying on top of the technology and they're optimizing my campaigns. Let me explain. We've always heard the buzzword, the algorithm. That stuff changes like almost daily, right? How can you possibly stay on top of the algorithms for your advertising and stay on top of your business? You can't. I encourage you, just let Eric Nichols take care of your advertising. He can hook you up if you're B2B, your retail, your food and beverage, your manufacturing, your nonprofits. Hell, if he did it for me with mortgages, there's no telling what he can do for you. But if Eric and his team can't help your company and they think you're on the right track, they'll tell you that too. But I got results. I saved money and I made more money. All because I went to conradsguy.com. Okay, that's not true. I just reached out to Eric directly. But you can find him at conradsguy.com. And trust me, it's worth a little bit of time it'll take. If they can do half as good for you as they have for me, you'll see why I tell everyone I got a guy. Go use my guy right now at conradsguy.com. Envisioning marketing consultants where smart but simple marketing drives results. So listen, we've told a lot of stories about little folks here on the show, but you have a note in here about Haystack Calhoun. I got to hear your Haystack story.
Oh, yeah, that was in Vienna. And I got to tell you a story about Finlay saving me from getting stabbed, too, in Vienna, which happened on that same year, I think, because I was there 2 years in Vienna. I think that was the same year. Anyway, I'm by Haystack Calhoun, who's this legend, and he was really nice to me. And so I don't want to be mean to the Haystacks, but anyway, he was sitting there and he said, sit by me, kid. And so I said, all right. Well, I didn't realize that I was the only one that'd sit by him. So it was like, it's like nobody told me not to do it. So he's sitting there and he tells me, he goes, yeah, I got this huge ranch in Ireland. He goes, I want to invite you out there, come out there and you stay with me and all this stuff. And so finally, after like a week or two, he's told me all this bullshit. Finlay and St. Clair pulled me aside and said, "Did he tell you about his ranch?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Did he invite you?" I said, "Yeah, really nice guy." Said, "Johnny doesn't have a ranch." He doesn't have anything. He was just full of shit. So he had sit there and let me for 2 weeks sit there and think, "Man, this is great. I got this whole vacation in Ireland planned. I'm going to go stay with Haystacks. This is wonderful." And then I found out that none of it was true.
He just made it all up. It's all a lie.
Just made it all up. Yeah, he just made up to like Americans about different stuff. I don't know if it was a game he played or if, if he was just lying or what it was, but he just made it up. And they knew he'd do it to me. And so they left me by Haystacks. Because once you get a place in the locker room, you're there for we were in Vienna for 6 weeks. So I'm beside this guy for 6 weeks. So once you get there, you're kind of stuck. It's kind of hard to move at that point without, something being awkward. And so I'm sitting there now after 2 weeks. I mean, this is great. He's telling me all this shit and all this stuff. And man, what a nice guy. I'm going to go stay with him and use one of his Mercedes and drive around, and found out that none of it was true.
Tell me a little bit about Vienna. I mean, I know you helped save him once in Vienna, and I guess he helped save you once in Vienna. What the hell's happening in Vienna? What are y'all doing? It
was summer, and guys, we're right by the Hauptmark, I believe is the main mark. I believe that's what Hauptmark is in German. And it was right by the big church down at the cobblestone church down there. Vienna's a wonderful city, man. One of my favorite cities in the world. Great food, great people, everything just fantastic. Love that city. We would stay out on a campground just outside of the city, where the gypsies stayed, that were working carnivals and stuff around, and you say at the campground, they had some type of pool there. They had the showers and the bathrooms because we didn't have any in our caravans. We had to go, community stuff everywhere we were, but it was a wonderful life. I mean, if, people always ask, where would you go back to in life? I'd go back there. That was a fun time. We had such a cool time in Vienna, but folks, it was summer and there's always festivals. And so people would get pretty drunk. And the night that Finlay, I had to go out and save him, and I wasn't the only one. Otto sent out all the heels, so it wasn't just me. He had gotten heat on Mick McMichael, and Finlay was probably not able to get back to the dressing room, and Otto sent out all the heels to have to go save Dave to get him back. But same thing happened to me. I was wrestling Luke Poirier Rambo, who was a terrific star in Europe. He's one of the guys I thought should have made it big in WWE, and still don't know why he didn't. And after the match, it wasn't before, and place started to riot, and I got a lot of heat, and I didn't know it, but a guy behind me had pulled a butterfly knife, was about to stick me in the back, and I didn't see any of that. Apparently, he made a big deal out of it. He pulled this big knife out. He's about to stick me. Well, Finlay's, literally almost running toward me. And I thought, what the hell is Dave doing? I knew they were coming down to get me because I knew that I was in trouble because this riot was about to happen, and security didn't help you. They were, Vienna security. They're not going to fight their own country people to protect an American or an Irishman. And when the guy saw Finlay, he was such a legend in Europe. The guy literally, instead of stabbing me, threw down the knife and took off running and went and jumped over a fence.
Oh my God.
True story. Yeah. Guy literally, when he saw Finlay, the guy was going to stab me. Now, I didn't have my face to him, but he's going to stab me. But when he saw Finlay, he literally threw down the knife and took off running from Finlay, ran up some bleachers that were, by a fence. There was a drop-off. It was a pretty good drop-off. Climbed over the fence and jumped down to get away from Finlay. So Finlay, I don't know if he saved my life. That may be going, exaggerating, but he certainly saved me from getting stabbed in the back by a guy with a butterfly knife.
I do have to ask, there's a story about Finlay pulling down a fella's pants in the middle of a brawl.
Finlay tortured Otto. Tortured Otto. And I say this in a good way. People say now, these snowflakes now get so mad about people ribbing and all that stuff. That's what we did. We had fun. So Otto would invariably, when a guy would get heat, here come Otto, a big belly, shaking, he come walking, Otto I heard he had the world record for ripping phone books in half. I don't know if that's true, but I've seen him get phone books that are, that thick and just break the boundary and just rip them in half. He had hands that were freaking unbelievably strong. Big, strong, Austrian. That's just what you think of an Austrian. That's freaking Otto Vance. But Otto was a huge, huge star in Europe. It's hard to explain how big he was. We went through customs one time going down to Croatia. He didn't have his passport. He called ahead. He goes, "Hey, it's Otto Vons. I don't have my passport." And they go, "Okay, come on through, Otto." They all wanted to take pictures with him. He went to another country without a passport. He was such a big deal down there. Otto was huge, not a huge man, but he's also a huge star. But he would invariably, Finlay would get heat, and Otto would do something. Well, Finlay's smaller and can move, and he would just torture Otto by doing stuff, making Otto come get him. Then he'd go somewhere else and make Otto come, over there with the big belly walking over. So finally, Otto is mad at Finlay because Finlay's screwing with him, and Otto gets him pinned back against a door, and now Finlay has nowhere to go. And Otto has got him cornered finally. And so Finlay looks at him and it's like, oh my God. And he reaches forward and grabs his pants and pantsed him. So I dropped his pants to his ankles. And this big fat son of a bitch dropped his pants to his ankles. And Otto was such a good dude. And he saw the humor in things. He was like, "Oh, you son of a bitch." He tried to pull up his pants, and Finlay runs off the door. There's big Otto bent over, pulling up his pants, this legendary Austrian hero with the whole crowd watching this huge, big, fat man pull up his pants.
My God.
I'm telling you, Conrad, you would have loved to have been around him. He was so much fun.
I had dinner with him once, and he had a line that I'll never forget. We were doing a dinner for Ric Flair. It's after Rick had he had become a zombie. We all remember how Rick died, and then he came back to life and started a marijuana company and a mushroom energy drink and all this. But after he had his health complication, there was a get together, and it was maybe a few days before his celebration with Wendy, and we're in somewhere on 30A in the Panhandle of Florida. And it's a really nice restaurant. And just as luck would have it, Megan and I wind up seated across from Mr. and Mrs. Finlay. And they're both wonderful, especially his wife. How could you not love his wife?
Mel, she's a wonderful lady.
Well, I didn't know if we should say her name or not, but that's on you.
I apologize if I did that.
Well, I don't know that it's a secret, but I'm always like, they may not want that out there, so I won't say anything. But either way, she's tremendous. And to this day, when I see her, we give each other a hug. She's just a wonderful person.
She is. Terrific lady.
But Fit, just casually, the topic of wrestling today comes up. And you know how Rick says, "Oh, back in my day." You know the deal whenever Rick's holding court. Well, Fit has a great line that I thought was hilarious. He said something like, "Back in my day, we had cauliflower ears, but this generation will have cauliflower thighs." And I thought it was hysterical. I'd never heard that before. And it really exemplified why everybody loves Fit Finlay. I know you're tickled at that too. I do want to ask you, no disrespect to Rey Mysterio. I know that you wanted to pay it forward, what Eddie had done for you, and you dropped the Intercontinental title to him at WrestleMania in 2009. But respectfully, it was like 20 seconds. As far as a real deal WrestleMania match, for all intents and purposes, your last real wrestling match at WrestleMania was you and Fit Finlay. Yeah. And that's why I'm so proud that we're able to talk about him today, because I know that you both had such mutual respect for each other, and you went out exactly like you'd hope, a Belfast brawl where you guys absolutely beat the shit out of each other for 8 minutes and 35 seconds. Tell me about your WrestleMania match with Fit Finlay.
It's a dream come true. It really is. It's like working with Terry Funk or working with Kerry Von Erich, or tagging with Dick Murdoch, wrestling Shawn Michaels or Undertaker. I mean, it really is something, because I got to see Dave every night in Europe, and I got to see him at his peak. And I'm telling you, for those that didn't see him, you missed. When I say he's the greatest of all time, that's not bullshit. That's what I believe. Now, there may be, you say, is someone greater? I don't know. Put Shawn Michaels, Undertaker. There's so many great wrestlers. I don't know anybody that was better. And so I had such respect for Dave, and he taught me so much because I'd watch him. I watch him how to be a heel. I watch him how to be a heel in public. I'd watch him how to be a heel in the ring. I watch him how to be a heel in entrances. I just watched him all the time. I learned so much from him that when I got a chance to be at WrestleMania with him, that was a dream come true. I was so freaking excited. And to this day, I'm thrilled about the fact that I got to be out there with a guy that I have so much admiration and respect for. And the match to me was perfect. You know, because we both just love hitting other people really hard. It's fun. And he told me, he said, I'm going to jump through the ropes. This is what he would do. He goes, just hit me when I come through. I said, where are you going to land? He goes, I don't care. You know, that was Dave. He didn't care. When I hit Hornswoggle with that trash can, Dave laughed. He goes, you got him. You got him. We're in the middle. We got 67,000 people around, and we're sitting there both laughing about getting Hornswoggle with the trash can. It was a lot of fun.
By the way,
we didn't talk over much of anything. It was just, we're just going to go out there. We're going to beat the living shit out of each other and have some fun.
It had to be a big moment too. I mean, I think Fit was nearly 51 years old when he's doing a tope at WrestleMania.
Yeah, and wanted to get hit in the head. And
Yes.
and when I said, where are you going to land? He goes, I don't care. And he didn't. He goes, just hit me hard. I said, okay.
Fit Finlay, a man and a half. We've got a live studio audience here. Let's do some questions here. We're kind of all over the place with the questions, so we'll hit them rapid fire. And if you're wondering, yes, we will be live next week here at somethingtowrestle.com. Make plans to join us. It's easy to do. All you do is hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell, and you're going to be good to go. And next week, by the way, we're doing it live here. It's Ask JBL Anything. So we're going to cover a variety of topics. This is maybe a teaser of what's to come next week. We'll try to zip through some of these so people can get to Monday Night Raw. John, we got a question from Trigger Cheese, who says, JBL's favorite 5 matches of his career. Rattle us off in no particular order, 5 of your favorites.
Yeah, it'd be hard to list all 5, but I'll try to do it. So the one with Eddie Guerrero, the first one with Eddie Guerrero, because I knew if that match didn't work, it'd probably be a one-off. The match with Undertaker at No Mercy. I'd have to throw in I'm going to throw in me and Ron versus Public Enemy just because people talk about it so much. And and not because of what happened, but because Ron, when I told him they weren't going to do the finish, he goes, then we'll take the table to them. It's just Ron's reaction to it was so cool. Match with Kerry Von Erich, just because that was really cool for me. And one of my first big matches against Tenryu in Japan. No, I'll take it back. No offense, Mr. Tenryu. First match against Stan in Budokan.
I thought there'd be a Cena bloodbath in there somewhere.
You know what? I should have put the Cena I Quit match in there because I thought that was an important match for Cena's career. You're 100% correct. I was rattling off and forgot.
Oh, no. Listen, that's what we're doing. We're going to have time to talk more about those matches here next week on the program. It's Ask JBL Anything. Big Mac says, I can't believe Cena put R-Truth through a table. I know that it happened the day before, but I kind of want to believe. I'm just going to convince myself, hey, they did it for Sabu.
I hope so. I love R-Truth. Me and Ron are the biggest R-Truth fans possibly in the history of the world. And what he's done on Instagram when he was talking about Shannon Sharp's video when he was out there, he just R-Truth. I love R-Truth. You know, and we told him one day, he said, we got to talk to you. So what is it? So you got a line in your rap song when you come out that I'm one of the best young brothers. And he said, yeah. I said, the brother part may be true. The young part ain't. and he changed it. That's when he changed it.
I do want to show you something because I don't know that you've seen this. I'm sure. What am I saying? Of course, you were probably there. The unbelievable happened recently, and there's a photo of your man Ron Simmons posing with Ahmed Johnson in present day. When I saw this photo, I said to myself, damn. Can you believe they buried the hatchet? How great of a photo is that?
That is an awesome photo, and I have not seen that, and I was not there. Ron must have been a different appearance than me, and I hardly do anything without Ron being there because I get, I want to. One reason I do appearances is because I enjoy seeing Ron and Godfather and the boys. So
sure,
I try to arrange it where when Ron and Godfather and those guys are going to be there. But I didn't see that. But I'm glad. I'm glad it was. I told you when you asked me about Ahmed, all you can do is talk about how people treated you.
That's right.
And he treated me fantastic. And I've been to his house in Houston. He was nice to me, very nice to me. I have nothing bad at all to say about Ahmed. In fact, I have good things to say about him because he was very nice to me. We worked together a lot in Texas.
Appreciate 40-ounce C-Dub showing some love here. Alex wants to know, speaking of snug, how is Bob Holly doing these days? When's the last time you saw Bob Holly, John?
I don't know. It's been a while. I really like Bob. I really like Bob. I thought Bob we worked together a ton of times. We had a lot of fun together. Bob's just a good old country boy that loves to race cars and a good, tough guy. I really like Bob.
Mike Johnson says, other than Public Enemy, any other going into business mid-match stories you could share?
I will tell one about Bob Holly. He told one of the greatest lines ever. And, when he and, I guess, Rene Dupree got into the fight, we were there. But something with the rental car. Anyway, Bob had one of the greatest lines of all time. He was on a commuter flight, and Rene, I guess, was sitting right in front of him. Bob leaned forward, and he says, "You have 24 hours to learn how to fight." That's one of the coolest lines I've ever heard.
What a great badass line. Instagram, a wrestling historian, says, what if WWE released JBL for that bad tag match? Can you imagine if you come through the curtain after that Jackie Gator debacle?
The hell with you, Instagram historian. Actually, I like that guy. He's good, some good stuff.
He brings some great questions.
He does. And I wouldn't have blamed him. I mean, Conrad, it was so bad. I walked through there. I was depressed. I'd never been part of anything that was so freaking bad. Vince looked up at me and in pity said, "I'm sorry." The boss just told me, "I'm sorry. It was so bad." That's how bad the match was.
Alex says, could you do a watch along with Booker T for the 04 Survivor Series match? I don't remember what made that one special, but yeah, why not? Let's get Booker on one day and do a watch along.
Yeah, and I said before, somebody quoted it on the internet. My career wouldn't have been the same without a title match against Booker. And I don't care if he had the title, if I had the title, it didn't matter. We started together, and he means so much to me. And I love him and Charmel. That meant a lot to me to be in that match with Booker.
Guy W. John says Fit Finlay was disqualified in the 08 Royal Rumble. We talk about Montreal, but is this the NYC screw job? A freaking Rumble, and he still got DQ'd? Yeah, I think he's got a case. Maybe he's onto something.
Yeah, he might still be in that Rumble. And I think there's a case to be made for that.
He's not. Yeah, he's the rightful winner. He needs a title.
He's the rightful winner of that Rumble because he was never officially put out. It's like when Curtis Axel wasn't it Curtis Axel that was still in the Rumble for years? Yeah,
and technically Zach Gowen because both of his feet have still not touched. Just throwing it out there. AOT
he wrestled a match, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think I didn't see it, but I have it on DVR. But yeah, he showed up for AEW and
I'll tell you the strangest story. I was walking through a hotel one time in Tampa, and a guy's in the pool, and he goes, "Hey," and I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm the wrong one-legged guy."
Oh God, damn! Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. And I said, "I'm sorry." He goes, "I'm the wrong one-legged guy." Laurinaitis signed the wrong one-legged guy. And they told him to sign a one-legged guy in Florida. And I mean, I guess he went down there and he found he found this gentleman and signed him. And then they told Johnny, you signed the wrong guy. We're looking for Zach Gowen. And I guess it was Florida, whatever it was. He signed the wrong one-legged wrestler. And I said, "I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about." And I'm walking by the pool, and he's in the pool having a few drinks. Big jacked up guy, nice guy. And he showed me that that his leg had been amputated or whatever had happened to it. And he goes, "They signed Zach Gowen instead of me." And I said, "I'm sorry, I had nothing to do with it." And he goes, "Well, I'm just telling you." He goes, and I said, "Well, it's a pleasure to meet you." It was crazy. I'd never seen the guy before, never seen the guy since. Nice guy, just having a beer in the pool, and big jacked up dude, the wrong one-legged guy.
We have to start just telling Blue Meanie to turn his webcam on. I can't believe this, but a half hour ago, he was in our live chat and he said, "Hornswoggle has a barcode tramp stamp." I mean, listen, he dressed with him. He probably knows. we got to get to the bottom of that. So next week, out with the trash can, just check right above the the split tail and see what's going on there. AOTV Production says, what are the chances you guys think we get Logan Paul versus Pat McAfee one day? I don't know. I mean, never say never in wrestling, right?
No, and I think it's great what these two guys are doing. They're massive followings, and they love the business, and they're good at what they do. I mean, Logan Paul to me is probably the best celebrity integration maybe we've ever had. I don't even know if you call it integration now because he's wrestled so many times. So is Pat. But man, what a star these two guys are.
AOTV Production says, "Hey John, Vince Russo posted a list that qualifies people as marks. Have you seen it? By the way, in the list he misspelled orgasm. Boy, I don't know what that means, but I think the days are probably passe about, bro, you're a mark. Like, hey, if you have a webcam and a microphone and you talk into it for a living about pro wrestling, aren't we all kind of marks? I mean, Like you want to talk about a non-mark. I had a conversation earlier today with Sandra Gray. She's going to be on adfreeshows.com. We had a phenomenal interview for a series we call Insiders. It's people behind the scenes of pro wrestling. You want to talk about not a mark? I think Miss Sandra is at the top of the list. Wasn't a wrestling fan, ain't a wrestling fan, ain't ever going to be a wrestling fan, but made money in wrestling. But outside of Sandra, like everybody in the wrestling business is a mark for wrestling, right, John?
Oh my God, we're talking about wrestling. Of course we are. Of course we are. Absolute 100% marks. Might as well stamp it across our forehead. Mark, absolutely.
I know that people are going to take issue with that, but man, if you're willing to sacrifice your body and your travel schedule and time away from your family, you got to like the shit on some level. I mean, come on, what are we talking about?
Listen, I'm a mark, and I have been ever since I've been in business. I love the business. I love watching these guys. I just saw that guy do the flips over and over and over in New Japan Wrestling. In fact, I put out on Twitter, I said, not enough for Ricochet to steal all of me and Ron's move. Now we got this guy. And of course, the guy, like, thousands of likes, which is kind of cool. But I've seen the guy watching the guy do this. I've never seen anybody do that. That was freaking amazing. And I'm a huge mark for stuff like that. I think it's great. There's this Cobb guy who just debuted.
Yeah.
Oh my God, man! I was a huge mark for Gary Albright, and I think he may move better than Gary, but man, that's close suplex like that, like Saito used to do, and that great stuff. I'm a huge mark for that. A mark for the European chain wrestling, because I couldn't do it, but I love that kind of stuff. I love this business, so hell yeah, I'm a mark.
Well, let's talk about one last crazy theory, and then we'll put a close on this one. I know we're in overtime. Technically, Raw's already started, so we'll make this our last question. By the way, if you've got a question for John, make plans to join us next week, right before Monday Night Raw. We're going to be here taking your questions live at somethingtowrestle.com. It's Ask JBL Anything, and we don't shy away from shit. We're going to take all your questions, get them coming this way. Just go hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell.
Yeah, and shout out to Meanie. I saw your wife at WrestleCon, but I didn't see you. You were there somewhere, but me and Jerry Briscoe were looking for you, but we never found you.
He was looking for Hornswoggle's barcode.
That's exactly right.
AOTV Productions says, hey, John, here's another crazy Russo theory. He believes that since we haven't heard from Cody in weeks, that Triple H is deliberately burying him. But Cody's been on vacation with his family. I mean, respectfully, we're just talking. We're saying things to say things to get attention. Like, we haven't seen Roman Reigns either. Does that mean he's getting buried too? Like, if Cody Rhodes has been on every media appearance for years, he's been on every show. If there's a camera, an appearance, a promotional piece, whatever it is, Cody's there. I think it's natural that after a big match like that, you need to step away and let the story become more about John Cena for a minute. Cody's coming back. He's not getting buried. That's a little silly, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. I remember back in the day, as they say, when we were burying Daniel Bryan, and he was on 5 episodes every single Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. Boy, if that's burying him, I'd wish you would bury me too. Of course, then you put him over and 80-something thousand people are chanting yes. It's one of the greatest moments in wrestling history. But Cody's been on everything. You got to cycle him in and out. It's not when you're long-term status in a territory, which it is a territory. It's now it's just a global territory. You've got to do that. You got to simply cycle people in and out. It's for their longevity. Cody's going to be fine. He spearheaded the most profitable era in wrestling history. They're not burying nothing for that cash cow.
No doubt. And we're going to let you guys get to the cash cow that is Raw on Netflix. Set your programs, set your calendars, set your alarms. Next Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern, right here on Something to Wrestle with John Layfield.